don't know if the PA is going to be necessary.
You guys are all set?
Are we all set, BCTV robot?
ready for this? Okay, seems like it. All right, good evening. Welcome to the Brattleboro Selectboard Meeting of Tuesday, October 1st. We convened at 5:15 for an executive session, and at that time I asked John whether this meeting was properly warned, and he said,
Yes, Daniel, it was.
that's great. Our first order of business is to convene. We already did that. Our second order of business is to approve the minutes of September 17th and September 19th, 2024. Can I get a motion?
A motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
Okay, Peter's made a motion to accept the minutes of September 17th and 19th as presented. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that passes 5-0. Chair's remarks. I believe it's somebody's birthday today. That somebody is Austin Rice of BCTV, and Austin is directing tonight's BCTV live stream. Franz, can you please mute that? Thank you. I never get to experience BCTV because we're just doing this, but the fact that they are able to put out a really professional product every couple of weeks with us, and this is not the only thing they do. They cover many meetings and events around the community. So I just want to thank BCTV and take this opportunity, and I hope that Austin has a good birthday select board directing session. Second thing I want to mention is about how to participate in this meeting, and I mentioned this for everyone, including select board members. One thing you need to do in order to be able to speak is to be recognized by the chair. So that involves raising your hand and then the chair saying, yes, so-and-so. So please seek to be recognized before you participate in the meeting. If you are participating from the public, we do have a time limit for folks who are speaking. We hold it at 3 minutes. It's a kind of up to 3 minutes. If you find that you need to speak several times on a particular agenda item, we'll sort of prioritize voices that haven't been heard ahead of you, but you know, depending on how much time we have available, you'll get maybe more than one chance to speak if necessary. We've had lots of participation in meetings recently, and I felt like we needed to remind folks about order and about, you know, how to participate in the meeting. I think people are getting used to that, but if during this meeting people need further reminders, I won't be shy in making them. And with that, I close my chair's remarks and pass it on to manager's comments.
Thanks, Daniel. The town has been informed from the Elections Division at the Secretary of State's office that there has been a delay in the mailing of ballots for the election. We've been assured that all ballots will be mailed out today or tomorrow. Please allow the mail ample time to arrive, but if you do not receive your ballot by Friday, October 11th, make sure to contact the town clerk's office so we can ensure that you get a ballot. As a reminder, the election will be held on November 5th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. If you plan to vote in person, we encourage you to bring the ballot that was mailed to you. The Human Services Review Committee is seeking applications from organizations focused on meeting the concerns facing our community. Applications are due on Wednesday, October 23rd. Please visit brattleboro.gov to download the application, instructions, and guidelines for applying. An informational forum for applicants will take place at the Brattleboro Municipal Center here on Tuesday, October 8th from 4:30 to 6 p.m. And finally, I want to congratulate Library Director Star Latronica and her team on being offered a nearly $1.5 million grant for improvements to the library. The Vermont Department of Libraries announced U.S. Treasury Capital Projects Funds grants today, and Brattleboro was one of 11 recipients statewide in a highly competitive grant process. STAR will be providing information on this to the board at your next meeting. So,
That's great.
that's it.
Thanks, John. Good news. Next up, we got select board comments and/or committee reports. Anyone with either of those things? No. Okay. Seeing none, we're going to move on to public participation. Public participation is for things that are not on tonight's agenda. If you'd like to be recognized, you can just raise your hand and I will recognize you. If you're on Zoom, I will try to see your name from afar. And this is also an opportunity to speak about your desire to have the select board discuss something that's on our consent agenda. So with that being said, anyone wish to be recognized? Yep, Mr. DeGray.
Dick DeGray, Brattleboro. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend the last meeting, not the Thursday meeting, and obviously the more important one was on Tuesday for me. I have a few questions for you, and if you could answer them, and then I may have a follow-up. How many police officers do we presently have active at this point? How many are actually here that have passed, but in training, but not official police officers yet? And then would be, what's the number we need to get to 27?
Okay, John?
I think it'd be great if, Dick, if you want to give the chief a call, she could provide all that info for you. I don't have it right here today at the top of my tongue here, but you can check in with with Chief Hardy tomorrow.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Other members of the public who wish to speak? Ms. O'Connor?
Thank you. Kate O'Connor from Brattleboro. And I just want to urge you folks to re-examine the budget process that you're going to use to put together our next budget. At the last regular meeting, you folks spent, or I guess you spent $1.4 million, and $800,000 of that would be in the FY26 budget. And I think that's a really serious thing to do. It's going to me, mean big decisions that you're going to have to make this town affordable for the taxpayers and the renters. And it could have long-term implications on our financial health in this community. So I think that you need a thorough and thoughtful process, and I hope that you'll really, really re-examine how you're going to develop this budget. I also think that, and I've said this before, that a focus group is not the way to put a budget together. And I particularly think it's not the way now, given that we're already $800,000. You spent $800,000 and you haven't even seen the FY26 budget. So I really, really hope you'll rethink it, how you're going to do it, because I think there's implications for our town that really need to be discussed. And if you don't understand budgeting, please don't just accept what you're given. Really think and ask questions. So I just think a thorough discussion about the budget needs to happen. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. We have somebody on the Zoom. It's Christina's iPhone. Christina, you're recognized.
Hello. Oh, wait.
If you could just introduce yourself, thank you.
Okay. There's my face. I'm Christina Shea-Anye, District 8 RTM, and I realize this is a comment, so I guess it's more of a question, but I'll turn it into a comment, which is, it would be really great if the town could help inform everybody what is in the new ordinance, because I keep getting asked to do that job. And I keep directing them back to you guys. And I've been talking to people about the ordinance and they have no idea what's in those 14 pages. They're really excited about it until they start to hear about what's in those 14 pages. And yeah, it's a drastic change to, and I'm wondering what you guys have planned to help us all understand how the town is going to change.
Okay, thank you, Christina. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. John, would you mind walking us through it?
Absolutely. 5 items on your consent agenda tonight. If you approve this agenda, you'll be accepting the award of a $325,000 grant from FEMA's Hazard Mitigation Grant Program to replace a retaining wall along the western side of William Street, just southwest of the Vermont Country Deli, to allow rebuilding of the roadway and protection of the water and sewer lines in that area. You'll be awarding the FY25 winter sand bid to the low bidder, Zaluzny Excavating, at $18.40 per cubic yard delivered and $14 per cubic yard picked up. You'll be authorizing the Department of Public Works to accept just over $31,000 from V-Trans for the FY25 Municipal Roads Grant in Aid Program to support implementation of best management practices on town roads. You will be awarding the Abbott Road Stormwater Improvement Project on 1,000 feet of that road to low bidder Belco Excavating for $20,700. And finally, you'll be ratifying a parade permit request from St. Michael's Catholic Church for a St. Michael's procession that was held on Sunday, September 29th.
Great, thank you, John. Can I get a motion?
I'll motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, Peter's made a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented. Are we ready for that? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that passes 5-0. Okay, board, I'm gonna ask you to consider a change to our agenda. We have a presentation tonight from folks that have traveled here for a little bit of a distance, and this is about the pool project. Sorry, I should have been clear. I'm going to ask for your consent to move that to our first item, and then the agenda will continue as normal. So after that, we would have the consideration of an acceptable community conduct campaign, and then the housing plan. So, board, looking for your consent with that. Okay, seems like I have it. So we are going to reorder the agenda. So the first item of business tonight is the Living Memorial Park Pool Project. Lots of P's there. And we have Carol and a gentleman whose name I do not have in my head, but I do appreciate you coming.
Certainly.
And I hope you appreciate getting bumped up in the agenda.
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So, Carol and John, we are ready for your presentation.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for that consideration on the movement in the agenda, as John has traveled from out of town. The majority of this presentation is going to be put forward by John from NCA, but first I'd like to take you a little bit down memory lane as to how and why we're sitting here this evening. Just to give you a brief history. In the 2023 representative town meeting, $50,000 was approved to do a feasibility study on the Living Memorial Park pool. In August of 23, the board awarded a contract to NCA, Northeast Collaborative Architects, to conduct the feasibility study. I don't want to take a lot of John's thunder, but I do want to, make a couple points before I hand the mic over to him. We asked NCA to do an evaluation of the pool and the bathhouse at Living Memorial Park, including the conditions. We asked them to hold community meetings to gather input as to what the community would like to see in a new aquatics facility. And we asked them to come up with conceptual designs along with cost estimates for construction and operational expenses. The pool was built in 1957 and renovated in the late 80s. Over the past 40 years, we've had several repairs done to the pool, and we're getting to the point that the Band-Aid just does not stick anymore. The biggest challenges that we face here today is the pool holding water. We have a 300,000-gallon pool. And this past summer, we went through approximately 12,000 gallons of water a day, which equated to about 850,000 gallons over the course of the summer. So that's pretty significant water loss. The bathhouse is a cinder block building that is not welcoming, and not only is it not welcoming, it's not gender neutral. So when you first come to the facility, you have to decide what direction you would choose to go in. And at this time, the community is looking for a lot more than that. So we gave that marching order to NCA, and I'm gonna, like I said, I don't want to take all of John's thunder, so I'm gonna let Patrick pull up his presentation, and I'm gonna turn it over to John to further the conversation here.
Great. Thanks, Carol. John, welcome.
Thank you. And again, I do appreciate the opportunity to present to you on this. And yes, working with Carol and Paul and the Recreation Department on the study from about a year ago now to where we are now. But basically, we met back in, we had a presentation back in March, and I want to kind of bring you kind of back to that point when we were back with you in March and some of the tasks we had in front of us, and then carry that forward to where we are now in the study process. So if you can advance the slide.
Come on, you.
Okay, so overall, this is a progress update. We wanted to be able to share with you again where we are in the process. So we have the key objectives that we left with from the March 21st meeting. We'll do a review of the conceptual design options so that you can go back and see, like, okay, what were they, what did they entail, and how much, what did we have for construction costs for each one. We did then, the next step was to re-engage the public, as you'll see, but basically we did a session, an in-person session on June 25th at the pool, so that way anybody who was interested could come. And then we did a follow-up online survey, and we'll share the results of that online survey because the survey did ask specific questions. And then we'll look some more at some of the costs and considerations of where we are now, and then our next step is to finalize the study and be able to then, that allows you to be able to have a document in front of you that you can use for budgeting purposes. So with that, on the next slide, the tasks really as we left that meeting were to re-engage the public and determine preferences of the design options. We also went through a breakdown of amenities costs. So we were tasked with, like, what are the base construction of the pool and the pool house, but then what are some of the other amenities that might be alternates? If we say we think we can afford a certain part of the project, what are the needs versus what are the wants, kind of. So that there's a breakdown now of those. Developing an estimate of operational costs. We worked with Carol to help develop those based on experiences in similar pools that have gone to multi-pool arrangements, to enclosed pools, to full indoor operations. We wanted to take a look at what would be the operational impacts beyond just the construction dollars. And then that public input session on June 25th at the pool, then the follow-up survey, and then the survey did a couple things. It differentiated between Brattleboro residents and non-Brattleboro residents, so that way we'd have an understanding of is there a major difference? Are the results similar? And then we were asked to present those results, which we're doing this evening. So go ahead. So the key priorities, again, Carol touched on some of them, and I want to just keep them as a high point. The basics, the pool that doesn't leak, that doesn't have cracking or heaving of the deck. That was certainly most important coming forward, but But we also, in the earlier survey that we did before the last meeting, we looked at what were some of the things people wanted: a longer season or a year-round operation, flexibility with the pool, a lap pool, and then other play areas, other areas for lessons or camp groups to meet while you're still having families there to swim. The gender-neutral changing areas, that was something Carol mentioned earlier, and a major focus of what the community wanted out of a transformed facility. Zero depth entry is very nice. It really has been a great thing with certain communities, and that you can just walk into the pool and you can have parents with small children at certain parts. You can have slightly older kids further down that long slope, and then you can then transition into the full pool areas or lap pool areas. And then unique to this, certainly having a facility that had a community room and also that has some the spaces required by the ski area. So that is a unique feature in a pool house, having an area dedicated to the ski area operations. So, and then the aging population, classes and fitness and therapy opportunities. So, go ahead. So the overview of the pool options. Option one was one main pool. That was to provide the main pool basically is almost an L shape, but there's a narrow neck between a 6-lane lap pool and then a zero depth entry area that transitions down to about 3.5 feet. In this case, it had a splash pad amenity. It had a dual slide amenity. The slide run out was separate from the pool. So those amenities are priced separately. I know it's kind of hard to see on the right, but basically this option brought us to between 625 or 6.25 to 6.75 million for the entire pool and pool house in this first option. And then
I wonder, is this available as a printout for folks in the room? I know it's not in the memo.
That is.
Yeah.
I do believe we could make copies of the memo for sure.
It's certainly available online.
It's certainly
right?
available online. If you go to brattleboro.gov and you click on Recreation and Parks, and then you click on Pool Project, all these options are laid out there with all of the breakdown of the pricing.
I appreciate the work, I can't see it.
Yeah.
It's on, maybe a copy of page 41 of 75. Has the prices.
And there should be paper copies of the meeting materials available over there, Patrick, right?
No, sir.
No? Would you mind?
Sure.
Thanks. Yeah, I know. Yes, Dick, go ahead. We're gonna go right back to the presentation after this. We're not gonna be interrupting like this because
No, the
It's a lot.
reason I want to ask this question is the number that was just quoted is not the number on option one. I think you quoted 6.2 million,
6.2 to 675
to 675.
and, yeah, 6,750, is that with all? I was just wondering why
That's
you
the
said
upper end of that scale.
6.2. The number you have here is 6.
Yes, I think
6,750.
John said, so it was, well, we're on option 2 now, but if we were looking at option 1, I think the range
Maybe
was
maybe that's
6.2 to 6.75. And so the memo speaks to the upper number, as I understand it. And when we get settled in a second, maybe we can answer these questions. And maybe, John, as you're walking through the presentation, if you could call out those numbers for us, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Patrick. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go back to the presentation, and let's save all of our questions for the end.
Okay. So I can't read the numbers either myself, so I was just going to look them up. So I'll
But the
defer
memo
the
on
mention.
page 41
The memo should
does
match
have
the
the
slides,
numbers.
so I'll just say that.
Yeah.
Carol has that.
Okay. Thanks.
That page.
Okay,
Yep.
all right, thank you. So option 2 is 2 pools, one being a 6-lane lap pool with an L, still an L shape, but the L shape is mostly a 3-foot, 3-foot or 3.5-foot section for different activities. It could be for lessons, it could be for an exercise class. The pool on the left is has a various number of things. It has a zero slope entry, a zero depth entry. It has some benches at various heights. It has some spray features in the pool area. It has slides that go directly into the pool and has a separate plunge pool area at the required depth for that. That's roped off, separate from the rest of that pool. So that type of pool, one of the options we looked at early was to look at what Rutland had done, and I think this is similar to what Rutland had done, where they had done 2 pools, one more of a 6-lane lap pool and the other one more of an amenities pool. And then option 2A and 2B on the next slides, these start to look at enclosing the 6-lane lap pool. In option 2A is a membrane structure. It's basically a steel frame with a membrane on it. That's on the image on the lower left. And then the other option was option 2B is a glass enclosed system. So that has more of a glass and aluminum frame structure. And then option 3 was to look at a fully enclosed indoor pool. And basically you have the various changes in those options. So those options were presented at the session on June 25th. There was a lot of feedback. I think the next slide actually starts to get into the initial session. So there was a variety of feedback on all those. I think we had about 20 people in attendance. It was nice to have people who had just kind of come over from the pool, and you could see what you had as an existing condition, and then look at the boards and kind of get a sense of what did you like, what didn't you like. We got a lot of that feedback that day gravitated towards the middle options. So option 2 with 2 pools, or options 2A and 2B with the enclosures. We had one person who said we should never do just one pool, and we had one person who said we should never do an indoor pool. So at least we those kind of options 1 and 3 started to pull to the sides a little bit, and that was reinforced in the online survey, as we'll see in a minute. But if you want to go to the next slide. So the online survey asked, are you a Brattleboro resident? And we had 82, just over 82% Brattleboro residents, and we had almost 18% that they were not. There were 260 respondents to the survey, so that was a nice sampling. As we look at the next slide, we see how the results shaked out. This is there's more of an explanation about what this chart means, but this is the score that each option had. So actually the higher the score, the more it was valued by those who were voting. It's kind of the inverse of the rank. So option 2A was preferred. Option 2B was also a strong candidate. If you take the 2 of those together, they really were a pretty robust sampling of what people preferred.
John, can I just interrupt you for a second? Can you say what options 2A and 2B are?
So option 2A and 2B are the enclosed options. So option 2A was the membrane enclosed option. Option 2B was the glass, more glass enclosed option.
And option 2?
Option 2 is the 2 pools outdoor. Option 1 was the 1 pool outdoor. Option 3 was an entirely indoor building.
Thank you. I won't interrupt anymore.
Oh, no, that makes, yeah, no,
Maybe.
that makes, certainly. So this is, by looking at, if you want to really see now, on the right-hand column, the average rank of each option is listed on the right. So that means that of all the people who responded, option 2A was just over 2. In other words, some people had it as 1, some people had it as 3, but the average rank of option 2A was 2, which is highly preferential. 2B was the other enclosed option was the 2.18, and then the option 2 was the 2.81, if I can barely read those numbers
You know, I am
myself.
going to interrupt again.
Yeah.
So at the point when this data, when these options were presented to the public, did they also know how much they cost?
They did, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah. So basically, they had the slides that you just saw that described each option were what they were voting on.
Got it.
You were voting on the number of pools, the way they were arranged in the plan, and the images that went with them, and it had the list of costs, both the base costs, amenities costs, and the total overall construction cost.
Okay.
And also on those, each of those was the annual operational costs as well, so that they saw the full picture.
So just to compare the Brattleboro resident results with the non-resident results, these are now listed by order of preference. So you'll see that the non-residents, even though there were only 18% of the respondents, the non-residents voted more strongly for indoor options. So the option 2A had a higher rank. That was again, the option to enclose the pool with a membrane structure. Option 2B, the option to enclose the pool with a glass enclosure. Option 2 then was less preferential. It was that's where the numbers start to shift, and the Brattleboro residents voted higher for option 2, the 2 pool outdoor option. And then you see a flip. Option 1, Brattleboro residents, their fourth preference was option 1, which was the single outdoor pool. But you can see the non-residents voted in the 4th place for the option 3, which was the fully indoor pool. So that's an overall sense of how the results compared, how the rankings compared from the Brattleboro residents to non-residents. And again, there were 260 respondents, so I think that's something we have to keep in mind. I'm not sure what the current percentage of overall town residents is, but that's a lot smaller portion probably than you're going to have at a town vote or a town bond issue or something. So, so here's the summary with the costs. Now I think we can. To come back to that, the cost of the actual construction. So just keeping in mind, again, option 1 was the 1 pool with the slide. That's where we were the 6.25 to the 6.75. The option 2, that 2 pool option outdoors. So both of those outdoor options are really within one overall range. The option 2A and 2B, one being the membrane enclosure and the other being the glass enclosure, those again are in another similar range. Then the entirely indoor pool kind of moves to a third range of costs, just thinking about things in overall sense. And that's just, again, for the construction side of things. When we look at operations, I think if you go to the next slide, we look at I think Carol and representatives from the town had done some looks at what the preliminary estimated tax impact is, and that's where we, if we're looking at the combined bond debt for construction costs and the annual operation cost increases, That's where from where you are now on operational costs. The outdoor options were about a $15,000 increase for both options 1 and 2 on average, more for option 2 because it's just simply 2 pools. The enclosed options 2A and 2B, that's where you bump significantly to another $450,000 because you have year-round operation, you have added staff, you have new, now heating water, you're now heating space. So we're talking about a much different paradigm in terms of what type of facility we're talking about. And then the full indoor option, similarly, large increase in overall operational increases to about $500,000 more than what you're spending now. So looking at that in sum, that's where the tax impacts per 100,000. The outdoor options were in a range of $30 to $48, basically from a lower interest rate bond to shorter terms in terms of years on the note. So the enclosed options ranging from $79 to $110, and then the indoor options from $100 to $134. So if we look now at, I think the next slide has some information on some other things we wanted to just mention, the logistics, other logistics and considerations to think about. That parking lot right now serves the pool quite well during the summer, along with other recreational amenities and softball games, and then in the wintertime it serves the ski hill. To think about how we would then increase parking for a year-round operation of the pool becomes a big challenge. There are limited other winter parking options. There just isn't the amount of potential street parking or other things just simply because of snow. It becomes far less convenient to walk from another parking lot, whether it be from the skating rink if that was open or the other lot closer to Route 9. There are just a lot of things to consider as far as parking goes. The pool house itself, one of the things that could be done is that the pool house configuration was a little larger in options 2A and 2B, the enclosed options. That's because we were looking at putting in a built-in heating plant and configuring the building for heat. So one of the things you could consider is if you were to consider just for now going with option 2, the 2-pool option, and then possibly sizing the pool house like you were doing options 2A and 2B. For not a lot more, you could consider that as an option to say, okay, we're going to build the pool house to kind of future-proof our needs, and then we could feasibly come in and close the pool at a later date if that demand for year-round use still works. One other consideration to think about, and unfortunately the timing of this, 3 weeks ago I would have told you that isn't it great? We're going to see reductions in escalation, but today I can't say that anymore. The construction escalations were starting to come down because of reduced interest rates and lower fuel costs, and the bidding climate was starting to get a little more competitive again, and so most contractors were looking at scaling back from kind of 5 or 6% escalations to 3.5% to 4.5% escalations. So there should be still, as long as some things in the world hold steady, there should be a reduction in escalation for the next year or year and a half. But to be safe, I think it's still, in other words, if you were to, all these numbers were escalated out to fiscal year of '26, I think.
Yes.
So they're, based on where things are today with construction cost escalation, it does seem like we could, that accelerating anything you do is a positive, because we could see lower costs next year, or next year to year and a half. And again, as long as, there aren't too many more strikes or potential wars in the world. So, but that's where we are with escalation and things. And then I think that is close to wrapping things up here. Again, Carol had talked about, I think in her memo, some of the things about the pool as it is now. It's 75 years old. It's outlived its life 3 times over, or twice over. Its last major renovation even was in the 1980s, a very long time ago. There's structural cracking, there's heaving of the deck. Those issues will not get better, they will only get worse. The cost of repairs will only continue to be a burden. The constant refilling, I think Carol's math is almost 3 times the volume of the pool. So that's a huge expense and use of water, potable water, and that the cost of water and its value to the community in general will not decrease. And meeting the needs of the current community, those pool users might not be pool users if they can't have their needs met. And again, with the pool house, some structural issues and ADA and gender neutral challenges. So I think overall the need is great, continues to be great. And if we go to the next slide, I think we had talked about some of the key things about attraction to the community, the programmatic expansion, being used for all ages and abilities, and revenue opportunities, all these things that any of these new pool options are gonna have. But I just highlighted the other two, the reasonable expectations for this community and the responsible expenditure. That's, I think, where we are with the study, is bringing everything together and saying, these are the options, this is what the community has said, as select as it is. We want to be able to work with Carol to wrap up the study and have it be a strong document that you can use to put forward in the future.
Great.
So thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. And John, I think you also want to make a short presentation from the memo?
Sure. I just let the board know that Patrick did a nice supplemental memo with this, just drawing your attention to the fact that we have another significant facility in town that was also built in the 1950s, and that is the DPW barn on Fairgrounds Road. That facility is also limping along and is another potential large capital expenditure that may be needed will be needed sometime over the next 3 to 5 years, I would say. So the memo brings a focus on the fact that we probably need to do some capital planning around these 2 different ideas and how that would fit into the guidance that we have from the board on borrowing. Mm-hmm. And there's details about that in the memo, and Patrick or I would be happy to answer any questions you have about that. I think it would be helpful to get a sense if there are any of the pool options that could start to be eliminated from consideration as we move forward with a more in-depth analysis of both the DPW garage and the pool project. The DPW garage is sort of in the planning phases. We don't have a cost on it yet. We have a placeholder number, but it's really too early to say exactly what that would be. Yeah, I think that's it on that.
Great, thank you, John. Thank you, John and Carol. Please stick around, I'm sure we'll have questions for you. So board, let's hear from you guys first. We'll hear from the public as well. We don't have a motion on this. We're not looking to make a hard decision on something, but some feedback would be helpful, I think. So, with that being said, who would like to speak? Who would like to be recognized? Let's practice that. Richard?
Question. The figures that we have for the combined tax impact are relate only to the construction costs, right?
Are you asking these guys?
Well,
No, I can answer that.
so they're combined on page 40.
They're, yeah, page 41 has both the debt costs and the added operations costs built into it.
Oh, that's built in, the operation cost.
Yeah, it's that second line below the debt line on each of the options.
In the top part of the chart, Richard, you've got like the term of the loan, the debt, the added operations, and then a total cost.
Yeah, I'm asking the tax impact, is that built in too with the operation costs?
The
Yes, it's
tax
the
impact is the result of those costs above it.
Oh, okay, that was my question.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone else? Elizabeth?
Thank you. I have a couple questions. First, is item A and B, are they heated?
The options A and B, the 2A and 2B options
No,
of the
The
pools.
single.
the single pool and the dual pool outside, the two outside
Oh,
options.
no, they're not heated.
1 and 2, thank you.
Right.
And the membrane versus the glass, is there a lifespan associated with each of them?
Yeah, that, I believe the lifespan is about 25 to 30 years
For each?
for each one. Yeah, the membrane is closer to the 25 side and the glass is closer to the 30 side.
And are they problematic in any way? One have benefits and the other doesn't?
Well, so the membrane option would generally be would be more sustainable on its own. In other words, it is basically a fixed membrane. It is up year round. That's one thing that has to be remembered. This doesn't come down. The membrane doesn't come down in the summer. It does stay up year round. And there are overhead doors on the sides of, and by overhead doors, I'm talking about almost like a garage door, that are on the sides or ends of that enclosure that allow it to open to the air, so that it would be open to the air from the sides in the summertime. But once you reach, end of August, September, you'd have those doors generally closed, and you would be heating the space. The glass enclosed option would, for the vast majority of those, have sections of those, the roof panels that slide open and closed on a mechanical system. So those tend to need more maintenance and upkeep and repair. So while that option lasts longer, it is more of a high maintenance issue.
Mm-hmm. And option 2, with the 2 outside pools, a roof, a membrane or glass could be added later if we so chose.
It could, based on the way we configured things in the plan, yes, you could do that. You could, because we were looking at not really changing the pool arrangements from option 2 to 2A and 2B. So those could be added in the future. The one thing that it might make sense to do is to, as I was talking about kind of the future proofing, was to add space in the pool house, add space and some infrastructure in the pool house so that you could heat that and provide heating to the space, heating and ventilating to the pool space itself in the future. So as long as it's not a lot of square footage to just add on to the pool house now, whereas the bulk of that cost comes from the actual enclosure and the actual heating of the pool and so on.
Great, thank you.
And my last question is for Carol. Carol, you have any wonderful grants out there you have in mind?
I don't have any from the HIP at this time. There's, you each year. Every year is different, but there's nothing that's coming across the desk at this time to that magnitude. Small stuff, yes, but we're talking big, much bigger money in this situation.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, John.
Franz?
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks for that presentation. I thought it was really good and informative. So I'm curious about this membrane. What is it? I mean, membrane sounds thin. Winter sounds long and cold. I mean, how does it hold up, and how is it insulated? And I mean, tell me about the membrane.
So to the best of my understanding, I believe it's a PVC product. It's almost like you would have a PVC roof. There are some examples we could look at. The one that comes to mind closest to me where I am is in Connecticut. It's a large aquatic complex in Cheshire, Connecticut, that has all under one roof, one large enclosure, a series of pools, and including a 50-meter pool, I believe. So there's a lot of deck area because they hold a lot of multiple competitions at this pool. You would heat and ventilate the space. I have been in it during swim meets in the winter time. As you get right up against the outside wall, yeah, you feel a little cold along the like touching the membrane itself, but it holds the heat just enough to be able to run the swimming events. So it's.
It seems like a big energy drain to me, just,
Yeah,
sitting
because you're
here and
heating
imagining
space
it.
that's only protected by a thin membrane. You're absolutely right in that regard.
But it's strong enough to hold up to a snow load and all that?
Yeah, it's. I believe there are some examples in Vermont, but I know that the one that I think of the most is close to where I am in Cheshire.
And now you don't use the term fully enclosed with that, though. You say the fully enclosed option is option 3, but the glass and the membrane, I mean, it's,
Well,
what is
we
the
didn't
difference
necessarily those options really related to the fact that, and I think it goes back to the idea that you could potentially add them later. In other words, you'd be starting with the same pool house you have in option 2. You'd start with the same outdoor pool you have in option 2. So we're just talking about enclosing the lap pool. There's a small L off of it, but basically it's enclosing that lap pool. And leaving everything else outside, leaving the pool house generally as it was designed. I didn't go through the plans of the pool house today, but from the last session, I think we did. And all of that is generally the same configuration. When we move to option 3 and thinking about an entirely indoor pool, that's thinking of like the Keene YMCA. It's you walk into a building and everything's indoors. It's all designed to be indoors from day one. It's a full insulated building now.
Okay, I understand. The other thing I'm thinking about is I was down. I don't usually swim in our current pool, but I did go down there a couple times this summer, and everybody seemed to be having a good time. And despite the age and the leaks, etc., it seemed like it was still a functional pool. Do you anticipate that changing? I mean, is something going to collapse and be unusable at some point?
Well, I can't really crystal ball it more than I think Carol or Paul or anybody else in the department could. But I think to the point that we did observe there's a known crack or buckle in the wall of the pool, and it's concerning enough to the point where something should be done in the near future. You may need to rebuild that wall if it buckles any further and you just can't caulk it or seal it or whatever. the only remedy may be to remove that wall and tear it out and replace it. Not an easy thing to do with a swimming pool. It's a big challenge in terms of the water removal and repair and replacement. The other concern about just the use of water, the amount of water that goes through that pool, it is surprising that you're filling that pool 3 times a summer, every year.
Over 10 weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Carol?
think it's important to mention the water that we're losing it in the top 8 inches, where that expansion joint is, underneath where the skimmer interfaces with the pool wall. That's where we're losing the majority of our water. And that's, that's pretty significant, and it's, affecting, the pool deck too, that was recently repaired. And we're talking about that particular joint has been repaired. It was repaired in '99. It was repaired in 2008. It was repaired again in 2016 and repaired again in 2021. So the Band-Aid is not holding. The stitches are long gone. The pool has lived its life cycle, I think, is the important thing to say. How much longer can we get? I can't sit here just like the same crystal ball that John talked about. I don't want to come here and tell you we don't have a pool project on the horizon and we're going to be closed this summer, because we don't have a pool, because the deterioration has gone too far. And I just think it's important. Do I think the sky's going to fall next summer? Probably not. Are we still going to lose 12 to 13, 14, 15,000 gallons a day next summer? Yeah, we probably are. And when we do these patches, it holds for maybe 2 years, and then 3 years, and then we're back to the beginning again. So right now, we're throwing good money after bad money time and time again. And I think that's an important piece to mention this evening.
Great, thanks, Carol. Let's hear from Peter.
Yeah, I kind of remember when this started to get thrown around a little bit, and I was reminded that a lot of our community members sort of, that pool is the way they sort of vacation for those people who might not be able to afford to get away. So, kind of, as we're thinking about which option to choose and which project that we want to go, I think we have to go ahead with something in order to give this community that option and that outlet. And of course, and if we can improve on it, I think that we'll have more people utilizing the pool and have a better vibe going. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to kind of remind everybody that, I mean, even though like Franz said I also have not used the pool, but I recognize what it means to a large segment of this community, and I don't want us to ever kind of lose sight of that.
I think that's a real important comment to make. If you come to the pool between the hours of 1 and 5 every day, those are the kids that are coming to the pool. That's their summer vacation. They're going to the pool every day. They're able to come to the pool, and at the pool there is the summer food program. So they're able to come to the pool. They are able to get their lunch, and they're able to spend the day at the pool, and that's where their summer memories are made. Their summer memories are not made at Cape Cod. They're not made at Hampton Beach. They're not made in Maine. They're made at Living Memorial Park. And saying that, I need to put this out there on the table. I think whatever the board chooses to do, we need to remember that over 60 to 65% of our community, of the kids in the Brattleboro schools, are eligible for free and reduced hot lunch. So we need to build something that the community can afford. And I think, I have had, when we had these community sessions, I can't tell you how many hands went on my back and said, Carol, please don't build something that I can't afford.
Thanks,
And I
Carol.
think they're looking at it from the tax base, and I think they're looking at it from the day they walk into the front entrance of the pool. and having to pay those daily fees.
Yep.
So I think, that's, Fish, you made a great point for me to take off from, but I think that's one big piece that we heard, or I heard. And I heard that when we didn't have our community engagement sessions. I heard that all summer long.
Thank you. I'd just like to speak on this for a second. So a couple of years back, we set a priority on the board of delivering an expansive vision for the town pool. And some wags joked expensive. But what we wanted to make sure was nothing was off the table before we'd even had a chance to consider it. We weren't nickel and diming the project, before the community had seen the options and the costs, because those two things need to be weighed and balanced. I think we need to invest in quality of life in this community, and this is a major investment in quality of life for decades to come. We have been so lucky to get as many decades as we have out of our current pool, and as we've been told, it's really, limping along. I think whatever the whole town decides to do, because this will be a bond vote, and I would say that this should be a bond vote of the whole town, not just representative town meeting. People will vote according to their vision for the future and quality of life, but also, their pocketbook as well. So I do think we need to bring forward a bond vote later in this fiscal year so that the community can weigh in. The other thing that I don't see in these preliminary kind of estimates is revenue. So there is a $25,000 line in the budget for revenue for our current pool operations. With a better pool, I think Peter said this, a better pool is likely to attract more people to use it. With a pool that's open for a longer amount of time, that's also going to attract more users. It's also going to have increased operational expenses as well, and those things will balance in some kind of way. To give folks an idea, I just bought a 6-month membership at the Colonial Pool the other day because I'm going to try and take up swimming properly and get through the winter that way, which I can't do in our town pool right now, no disrespect. That cost me $406 for 6 months. The tax impact to my household, based on what my home is assessed at, would be somewhere between $50 and $214 for a year. So for folks that are serious about swimming, they're already paying, multiples of what it would cost to their taxes. That is the benefit of doing it as a public good. We share the burden across the whole tax base. I also know that, those kind of facilities, those private facilities in our community are struggling to maintain their infrastructure because they need to keep their rates reasonable enough that people will go there, but I don't think they're managing to cover the costs of maintaining their infrastructure as well. So by building a pool that can be open year-round in Brattleboro, we are really investing in our community. Maybe it will help grow our ground list over the years. It'll bring people here. It will help keep young families happy here. It'll keep people of all ages happy and healthy. And so I think that it's really important that we allow this project to move forward a little bit further, and that we get to a point where we can at least present some options and make a decision on which we're going to present as a bond vote. Whether the bond vote passes or fails will be another story. We should be prepared for, what if it passes? Can we really afford that, right? But I do think that it's important for us to bring forward this kind of vision, and I'm excited about it. Elizabeth.
I just wanted to mention, I think people have said it, but not explicitly, the environmental sustainability of the value of the water. And just the constant replacement is not only a cost for us, but it's an environmental factor.
Yes.
So I really don't think we have the luxury of waiting. We just need to examine these options more carefully.
Great.
out of curiosity, what does a gallon of water cost from the town of Brattleboro?
Patrick?
We can find that
We'll get
information
that.
for you.
Yeah.
I mean, if I,
I'm sorry, sir.
just by
No,
judging
I'm
by.
joking, Patrick, I'm joking.
What's that?
We can put together a cost estimate of what that $800,000.
Yes, the loss.
It'd just be
is costing.
fun to know.
Oh, no. We should definitely find
Yeah.
out the cost of losing all that
I mean,
water.
because that's,
Yeah.
I'm sure if that was a private household, there'd be some tears shed.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's hear from the public. Members of the public who wish to make comments or ask questions, yeah, if you want to be recognized, come on up, Steve. And if you could direct your questions towards me.
Okay.
And I will give you up to 3 minutes.
Yeah, Steve Zaluzny. I think a great project. I guess one of my questions is, to me, somewhat Cadillac in nature, you know, and maybe I'm wrong with that. I know things cost a lot more money now than they did 5 years ago. But I guess, you know, if you can afford it, sure, if you can find grant money, you know, I love these proposals. Indoor, you know, all year long would be great. I'd probably use it. So what can we afford to do is the other question, you know. So if you can get the money, love these. If you can't, then what do? You know, you still need to replace the facility at some point in time. I guess the question is, are we locked in with these designs, or can we look at other options like design build, with all due respect? I guess is a question. I mean, if you're, you know, obviously maintenance is a big thing, things are deteriorating, so it does need to be replaced at some point. So if you're trying to be economical, then you're probably gonna go with non-year-round. You're gonna build a new pool that has new equipment that will last hopefully 20, 30 years before you have to replace the filters, the piping, concrete or whatever. And then, you know, how many pools do you build? It would probably be one potentially if you're trying to economize, and you need a new building, so you replace the building with whatever is adequate, but is durable and will last a long time. So that's just some other thoughts out there, you know, that I assume that there are other options that are possible that, you know, if you can't afford the Cadillac, you look at other things.
Thanks, Steve. So are there other cheaper options available to us?
Well, I think that, so from what I heard, I think to address some of the specific questions, again, these are conceptual level options looking out years into the future. So we're still talking 2 years into the future. There would still have to be design done. There would still have to be then construction. The idea of design build is certainly on the table. That's kind of a delivery method for the overall project, where after a town vote you could put out an RFP for design build services, so that you have a construction team with a design team working for the contractor to deliver on budget. But I think in terms of trying to help put realistic budgetary numbers in front of you, that's one of our tasks. The one pool option is certainly a little bit cheaper than a two pool option, because again, it's just the one pool, and we did pull out some of the amenities on that one. You could decide not to do the slide or the spray features and just do the one pool and the pool house. So all those options are on the table, and kind of a subset of option one.
Great, thank you. Other questions from members of the public? Yes, and I don't remember your name, and I'm sorry about that. Caitlin, come on up.
Thank you. Oh, very short. Hi, I'm Caitlin. Would live in Brattleboro if I could afford it. Your work is amazing. None of what I'm going to say is like anti anything you're saying. I think I can definitely say other members of the public feel that it is incredibly dystopian to talk about spending this much money on public infrastructure for a pool when there are so many people unhoused in our community. Also, you talked about it a little roundabout, and I'm a lay person, but I'm assuming you're talking about.
If you could address your questions.
Oh, yes. You're saying the cost in the past few weeks The construction costs projected are going up in the past few weeks because of strikes and because of the natural disasters that are happening in the South. We, as another community that's had multiple 100-year floods in the past few years, are absolutely going to need the same kind of infrastructure costs that the South is currently dealing with not having. What we don't need is a glass enclosed indoor pool for people to come together for $650 million. What we do need is public spaces for people to come together, spending that kind of money on public infrastructure where people can come together, potentially swim, potentially be together, build those summer memories that you're talking about. Absolutely necessary. I grew up around here. All my best memories are built around water. There are also other options for building a public pool option. Alston, New Hampshire, for example, has their public pool in a river. We live in an area with incredibly abundant natural swimming resources. This is one of the few places in the country you can walk 10 seconds in any direction and find a place to swim. I don't necessarily think it's terrible for people to be able to swim in the winter, but if you're spending $650 million on heating and water, Vermont has the second highest homeless population in the country. People need heating and water to survive. I'm all for swim teams and stuff. I'm not trying to say anything bad about swimming, but like, give me a fucking break.
Oh, okay, you can't.
Oh,
you can't
I'm
say
sorry.
okay.
I meant give me a break.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Is that my time, or do I still? Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. I'll
Yeah.
be back.
All right, Bethany? Hi, Bethany.
Hi, I'm Bethany Ranquist, Brattleboro, lifelong resident. My comment is going to sound very different than the previous one, but I just wanted to say that I'm really enjoying this entire conversation and discussion. And I have a couple points. I'm just going to cruise through them. First of all, I really want to give a huge shout out to Carol, who I have worked with quite a bit in the past, but I am always so deeply impressed by the amount of effort and work that she puts in to every project that she takes on. And I also really value that not only is she thinking about things like the cost of the pool and the, effect on the town, but also hearing that she acknowledges that the pool is such an essential place for so many of our youth in the summertime, and that they go and they get their meals and then they go to the pool. I've been there, I witness it. It's 100% accurate that is, for many kids, that's where they spend their afternoon while their families are working, or or just to get out of their houses in the summertime. And in a time when we have such a food insecurity risk during summer and a safety risk for children, I think it's really important that they're able to have a safe place to go and eat and swim, and be in a positive environment. So kudos to Carol on that, and thank you, Carol, for acknowledging. Well, I know I can't talk to Carol, but pass Carol my thanks for acknowledging that really essential part of the role that the pool plays in our community. Wanted to touch a little bit on the idea that considering going on a summer vacation comes from a place of privilege for any of us that go on it, not aiming this at anybody who mentioned it, but any of us who are able to go on a summer vacation are likely a lot more privileged than a lot of the families in our community. And I don't say that in a way to make anybody feel bad, but I also want to recognize that many of our families, as was stated, are only able to go to the pool in Brattleboro. And so having that resource is so essential for childhood and for families in our community who are not able to go, very far out of here at all. To the idea of swimming elsewhere, I take my kids all the time swimming elsewhere, but many people who don't have swimming ability need to go to a place where there are lifeguards, which our pool has. Most of our rivers and lakes don't have that, and also require more transportation to get there. The town bus goes right to the park. So that accessibility wise for many of our low income families is really important. And also wanted to say that in a time where we're looking at, ways that Brattleboro is unique and wonderful. I really love that we're looking at something that enhances the quality of life for so many people, whether it's kids on swim team, or I know I'm getting close to the end of my stuff, but getting kids on swim team, which is an amazing team that we have, and a really important important thing that the kids in our community have been really engaged in, or it's just people that spend the afternoon bonding with other parents while their kids are swimming. It's such an important resource, and I'm really excited at the possibility of improving what we have already. And then my last point, other than just yay for pools, is I would really encourage and request that you do put this to a bond to the whole town, not just to representative town meeting. I think it's something that everybody deserves a voice in. I love our RTM and our reps, but I think that many more people need it. Thank you.
Other members of the public who wish to make comments or ask questions? Ms. O'Connor first.
Kate O'Connor, Brattleboro. I didn't expect to say anything about this, but I would hope that you would think of things a little bit differently in relation to the cost. This has been happening sort of meeting after meeting. When you talk about a project, you say, oh, it's only going to be $50 more for each person, or only $100 more for each person. 2 meetings ago, what you folks did was just $250 more for each person. And I think it's more complex than that, because you're keeping adding up the dollars. And I think you need to start thinking of where we're going to do this, but what aren't we going to do because we're doing this project? And I want to actually say that I appreciate what the town manager and Patrick did in outlining, you got another project to think about, which is the DPW building. So I would hope that instead of going, it's only $50 more, right now we're up to $300 or whatever dollars more per tax rate. So I think it's more complicated than just saying how much it is. And again, I really think what Patrick and the town manager did about outlining what's going to happen at DPW is something that you have to consider this in the whole and not just this one specific project.
Great, thank you. Dick? Nope.
The bigger people are at the mic. Dick DeGray, Brattleboro. Carol, the pool opens roughly June 20th and closes around August 15th. I don't think that's 10 weeks. One of the things that, as a board member, I had always been advocating for the pool to be open a lot longer. Because just because the students aren't out of school, there are adults. The chairman just said that he just got a membership to swim all winter. And closing in August, and Carol's response was that we can't find lifeguards. And I'm not a supporter of something that's going to be open 8 weeks. Here it says 10. And the board should be pushing back and saying, if we're going to spend $7 million, we should be open a heck of a lot longer than 8 weeks. And again, I'm really concerned about that. The other thing, which I agree with a town bond vote, but I think you should do a town-wide survey, send it out to get feedback from the town. 255 people is less than 1% of the 12,000 people that we have. And so if you send it out, do you support having a pool? Yes or no? Here are the options and what their costs are, and then just send them this and have them send it back. At least that's going to give you some feedback as to what maybe the public wants, the membrane issue, or maybe they want a issue, or maybe they don't want it at all. But I strongly encourage you to send out a survey to the town and not go by the minimal people that actually use the pool, because the majority of the people don't use the pool, they're going to be paying for the pool. And I think that's important. And I also truly believe that you need to make sure that this pool stays open a lot longer than what it's staying open now, and not accepting the excuse that we can't find lifeguards to keep the pool open longer.
Thank you. Other members of the public who wish to speak? Mr. Sprite.
Fritz Bright, District 9 Rep. I guess I would like to reiterate, in a sense, something that I've said a couple times before, and that is that I would like to heartily encourage the town to give everybody as many reasonable recreation opportunities as possible, and in that sense, I would support maintaining any of our infrastructure for recreation, or as well as the other infrastructure that we depend on. I would also encourage the board to actively seek out wise counsel from those of us who are in the business of building infrastructure and are aware of how things can go together affordably before settling on a particular design or budget for something. I see many occasions where we spend a lot more than necessary to get a particular result. We have had situations where volunteers have provided like lighting for softball parks, which then got replaced for some reason. Anyway, there are many of us who would be willing to step up and help the board think through how to make these projects affordable, as well as making sure they happen.
Great, thank you. We are getting pretty close to time on this item. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak? And then I want to kind of come back to the board for some last few comments. Okay, so board, we've had a really great presentation. You've shared some of your initial reactions to it. We've heard from the public. I think one question that I see in the memo are like, are there things that we want to rule out at this stage, options that we really don't want to consider so that we can help kind of narrow as we move forward? Peter?
I don't know that we're at a place where we can narrow anything just yet. I mean, even though the sample size, which I consider a decent amount, gives us a little bit of guidance to step it in to those two suggestions that seem to rank higher, I might lead with those and maybe pick another one that might be a little bit more favorable to the tax base, and maybe march out with that. But I think kind of more information at this point is not, and I'm a guy who likes to limit, the amount that you put out there, because you'll get everything back. Mm-hmm. So I mean that's where I'm sort of sitting on this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great, thank you. Other members? Liz?
I'm kind of leaning towards option 2 with future covering in mind. I really don't think any of us could swallow the whole new building, and I really value what many people have said about the type of community that we are and the needs of the children in our community. So I want to make sure that it can be affordable to the families in our town. Having said those things, the only thing that I would narrow the scope to would be the fully indoor option.
You would take that off the table?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. As in option 3, which is the new building entirely, all pools. There's 2 pools and they're both inside.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Any reactions to that?
I'll react in a positive manner.
Okay, positive reaction. Any other reactions? Okay, I will say yes, I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to take off the table at this time. All right, no one seems to mind too much about that. So John, I think you got some feedback there.
Thank you.
I fully agree with Dick about the opening, the number of weeks that the pool can be open. I think it's a real shame that it's open such a short period of time when, you know, I come from a place where the summers aren't as good as this. And like, I know that I've been here long enough to now know that even though the summer is relatively long compared to the UK, it still is shorter than it could be if we were a few hundred miles south. And so I want to have the best possible pool experience for the town, which means an outdoor pool that can be used from the minute it's warm enough to be swimming until it starts to get some leaves in it. And I want to have an indoor option as well. I think that there's such a huge benefit to this community that people travel or they pay an exorbitant amount to get that kind of facility. They go to Greenfield, they go to Keene, you know, they pay out of pocket to stay here in Brattleboro at the Colonial. And like, I think it's gonna be a really wonderful thing, not just for swimming, but all kinds of, you know, fitness activities. You know, there's all kinds of like aerobics and PT, and you can't get swim lessons here. I'm actually currently going for adult one-on-one swim lessons to Springfield. I drive 45 minutes up the road to take a 30-minute swim lesson because the facility simply is not available here. And so like if we build this kind of infrastructure, we can also build that kind of softer infrastructure of actually, you know, teaching generations of Brattleboro residents and neighbors to swim and have a healthy life. Peter.
Yeah, just a quick question on that note, and knowing what it's like to find people to do things in an ideal, as Dick pointed out, yeah, I agree. I'd love to see the pool figure out how to keep it open for 20 weeks. I don't know, but how do you staff it for 20 weeks, I guess is the big question. So, like, how many lifeguards do you, I mean, lifeguards are probably the big thing, right?
Lifeguards are definitely the big thing, and our lifeguards are college kids and high school students. You know, I would love to have adult lifeguards, but I don't have any. I don't think I've ever had any. We're not attracting the adult lifeguards, which if we had adult lifeguards, then we could do that expansion. You know, with staying open additional weeks, I could see us opening like Memorial Day weekend, possibly going into the school, but we would have to do weekends because we wouldn't have all the staff that we would need. In our current pool, as we sit, minimum was we need to have 4 staff on. You know, God forbid if we ever had a backboard. You have to plan for a backboard every day. You can't say, we can do it with 2. There's nobody in this room wants a backboard with only 2 people, so you always have to plan for that. But to have 4 staff on, that's the challenge. That is the challenge of staffing. Many of our college kids, or even high school kids, they're the high school athletes. I'm headed off to football practice. I'm headed off to field hockey practice. I'm headed off to soccer practice. I have a hard time keeping, I think we closed on the 20th of August this year, that last week, and I was like, come on, can you go to practice in the morning and still give me 1 to 4 in the afternoon, or give me 1 to 3? That is a challenge. If I could have adults, that would be awesome, but I'm not getting adults.
Okay.
That's our biggest challenge.
Thanks, Carol. Other thoughts from the board before we kind of wrap this up? Franz?
Thank you, Daniel. A lot of information here, a lot of things to consider, but I keep coming back to this just bottom line feeling that I don't see where this fits in the fiscal year 26 budget. I think we're already looking at some really significant budget increases. I'd be willing to look at this again next year, you know, assuming I'm on the board, which who knows. But and I don't object to looking at it a little further, but I think when it all shakes out at the end, I'm just going to have to say that, you know, I don't see any way that we're already going to come in at less than a 10% municipal budget increase for the next year. I just don't see how that can possibly happen. And we've got other things to consider that we haven't even talked about yet, that would be further increases on top of that. And then there's the DPW question and what our borrowing capacity is. I think there's just too many unknowns, too much financial demand already built into fiscal year '26. I just can't see that I'm going to be able to get around to supporting it for next year's budget.
Other reactions from board members about that kind of comment? Sounds like Franz would be a no vote on the bond. Okay, all right.
But
Richard?
one kind of a question or concern, if we don't adopt any of these plans, I mean, I get the impression that the pool would probably have to shut down.
I'm not going to jump for John, but I don't see us stopping this. I see us opening this upcoming summer. How many continued years after that, as we can, as the pool continues to deteriorate and continues to lose water, the infrastructure certainly becomes a problem. That crystal ball is not there.
Yep. Liz?
And the cost will keep going up.
Right. Can we get, I mean, I've been on the board long enough to have funded some of our Band-Aids. Can we get some cost projections for, maintenance costs for the next 5 years? That would be helpful as if the cost of doing nothing, right, was on the slide. So let's actually have the dollar value of the cost of doing nothing. Because there's not nothing.
Yeah,
So
John,
we'd have to.
Yeah, and
That's one of those things we'll take our, general professional expertise of
Yeah.
what we've seen in other communities and talk about, what are the pitfalls. I'll tell you right now, we had one town that went ahead and decided we've got to fill these cracks so we can get one more summer in. And now they're taking out that pool and they have a PCB nightmare. And so there are some really hidden pitfalls to just shooting off the cuff, trying to solve a quick problem and then find out it's a big problem later.
Right, thank you. Peter?
PCB nightmare. What is that?
Bad chemicals.
Oh, yeah, the PCBs are the chemicals that are sometimes found in certain adhesives and caulks.
Okay.
And they're still, unfortunately, they're still out there.
I assumed they just didn't want to over-assume on that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Polychlorinated biphenyls.
yeah.
Great. So, board, I feel like we've kicked this around Plan E.
Yep.
It sounds like we're willing to kind of keep going for now. John, we've given you a little bit of feedback that you can work with, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think we will bring you something either as a budget alternate or a bond proposal for you to consider as you're looking at the FY26 budget. And if what Franz is saying, if the board ends up agreeing with Franz, then we can take it off at that point. But at least it sounds like you need to have at least one more conversation about this for this year.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, and we'll try to get, before that budget cycle, we'll try to get someone what some of those projections are on maintaining what's the existing.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, John,
Thank
for
you.
the presentation. Thanks for coming to visit with us. Carol,
Thank
good to
you.
see you.
I appreciate it.
And so, board, it is 7:51. We usually take a break at 8 o'clock. Let's take a 5-minute break now, and then we'll come back for our next item.
Thank you.
So back at 7:56. Actually, 4 minutes.
I'm very sad. Sad. Much sadness has descended upon me. Contributing to my overall sad demeanor. Can't tell you about it. Be here in 2 weeks. Yeah, be here in 2 weeks. My advice to you, Mr. Newspaper. Should pay strict attention to all of the items. How was your concert experience the other day?
It was good, but it's hard to really fill that place with sound.
Yeah, yeah, just the two of you.
Yeah, and then the band that came on after us, they had a slightly bigger sound system, but they still went.
Yeah, but the other guys in the tent did okay because it was just a confined space.
Yeah, Eka was pretty loud too. They had a big speaker, but all of the sound wasn't that good.
Yeah.
I was wondering though if maybe it was a little lower to the ground. I seriously thought about this. If it might have been.
Well, you know what they were talking about at the Estiville bandstand was there's no back to it, so that it's really not an effective bandstand at all. Because the sound just goes out. There's no forward projection.
You would think it would, but you're putting it down to wetsuits, and then when the suit gets warm, and then you let your face down for 2.5 miles, and you just start to fall asleep.
If that makes a difference for performance space.
Next time we're gonna hire sound.
Yes, she is.
Yes, she is.
Everyone is welcome here. Whatever their accent or their provenance.
Talking about absentee landlords taking
Oh.
Brattleboro,
Oh.
which is funny
Wow.
because, you know, That's a funny conversation. I think we should stay out of it. I'm not going to be able to get back in their building for a year.
Uh-huh.
A year. That's what they've been told.
Okay.
And it means that they can't find anywhere to rent.
Well, we're going to reconvene this meeting, so that's a non-warned item. France, you ready? You guys think I'm fooling with these timings, but I am not.
You are all business. I know that.
Yeah,
Happened to the second page.
it's almost there. So, we'll see what happens here. Hopefully no more expletives.
We're going back.
Yeah, what happened? Where'd they go? There it is. Oh, did I pull it out? Oh, I put it the wrong place. Okay.
All right.
All right. BCTV are just good, always, that we don't need.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So we're back from our break, and the next item on our agenda, because we rejigged the agenda, is actually old business, item A, consideration of an acceptable community conduct campaign. And John, you wrote a memo. Would
Yep.
you like to talk about it?
Yeah, the memo is essentially saying, hey, Brattleboro, let's all be nice. The select board's being asked if it would like to launch an acceptable community conduct campaign to encourage everyone in town to be nice to each other. The goal is to influence behavior through a messaging campaign aimed at improving public safety and community behavior in Brattleboro. The campaign is part of a broader community safety agenda that includes various initiatives such as legislative reforms, a downtown safety action plan, and collaborations with local organizations. The key decision for the select board is whether to implement the campaign directly, collaborate with partners, or step back and allow others to lead on setting the standard for a culture in town. The campaign could target two main audiences: individuals exhibiting unacceptable behaviors and community members concerned with those behaviors. Memo outlines possible messaging strategies for each group, ranging from a lighter touch to a more direct approach. The memo also asks the Select Board if they're ready to pass a motion to implement such a campaign, or whether you have suggestions for refining the messaging, or if you require additional information before proceeding. So if you want to start with the questions on page 30 of the backup materials, we would start with the first question, essentially, is this something we want to be doing right now or not?
Great, thank you, John. That's a really excellent jumping off point. And so I am going to ask us to consider that question. Is this messaging campaign as proposed here something that we would like to see the town be working on right now? Would we like to see the town work on it with some other people, or would we like some other people to work on it? And then depending on what you all think about that, there's some different avenues to go down. Elizabeth.
Thank you, Daniel. So, the first question, do I want a town to implement this campaign? Yes. I think it's important with the situation that we're trying to address and the numerous moving parts that the town staff has identified and the action that the Select Board has taken that requires explanation. And I think we heard from members of the public too that this requires explanation. And that's one facet of the communication plan. The next is, do we want to establish a newspaper and social media campaign and other media, I'm thinking radio, that really discusses this whole idea of being nice and respecting each other and building a stronger community. And I don't think that those goals are objectionable in any way. And I think that we should be working with community partners and the town staff to have this very positive messaging. I don't think that the community's ready for signs. I don't think that's thought through enough. And I would recommend that we have a messaging campaign with the town staff and partners that discusses social media, newspapers, radio, but not signs at this time.
Thank you. I'm just gonna, there's somebody's cell phone is going off in the audience and it's maddening, but if it's in somebody else's bag, can you just leave it be, please?
Just leave it be?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not yours. So please don't. Tell me about it.
I can't hear what's being said.
Yeah, it's really annoying to me as well. Hopefully they'll come and take care of it momentarily. Elizabeth, thank you for your comment. Anyone
Sorry,
else?
Elizabeth, I didn't hear a word of that.
Yeah. Would anybody else like to speak on that question of, like, do we want to do this? Do we want to do it on our own? Do we want to do it with somebody else, or do we want to do it not at all?
I want to do it. I think it needs to be done. I think messaging can bring forth somewhat clearly some of the steps that we've taken, some of the goals that we are trying to create for our town, for for our community. Decent messaging will define what we're looking for, make it clear, bring clarity. And by rolling that out on all possible platforms, radio, newspaper, social media, TV, interviews, however that looks, to kind of, if you will, sort of tsunami the landscape a little bit to make sure that everybody has a chance to understand what we're doing and what we hope to achieve. I think, and the only way to do that is by talking to people, and the only way to talk to people is to message. Keeping it simple, too. The message needs to be simple so everybody can understand it and everybody can gravitate to it. So whatever that looks like is what it should boil down to at its root.
Great, thank you, Peter. Hey, Patrick, is it possible you could go into the hallway and if people are gathered there, could you say, hey, somebody's phone's been going off constantly, and would you mind coming and?
Well, it's the young lady.
Yep, thank you, yeah,
Spoke so eloquently.
yeah. Okay, sorry. Okay, you're good, Patrick, thanks so much. Somebody's phone is going off, and if they could please take care of it, that would be very much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, Peter, anything more you want to add to that? Things got a little weird just for a second. If you wouldn't mind turning that off, thank you.
Oh, of course, yeah. My daily reminder to pray for the world.
Cool, thank you. Anything else you want to add to that?
No.
Okay. All right. Other board members with thoughts on whether we want to do this campaign? Richard?
I feel like we should implement a campaign, and, but I think, at this point, I think it would make more sense to have an initial plan developed by the town. I think if we bring in other partners at this point, it could get very cumbersome, but at least give other players who want to have an opportunity to weigh in after maybe the town comes up with a preliminary plan. Because then we can decide what to do with it at that point. But I think, as Peter said, I think all the platforms should be used. And I think the message should be with the approaching that lighter touch kind of philosophy. And, I think that this is what we've been talking about all along, is trying to fix a problem. And this is one of the pieces that has to go along with all the other pieces to make everything work.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes, you absolutely can.
Is our business this evening, if we vote to advance a plan, that the town staff would then run with it? And that there wouldn't be a constant back and forth between us and them? They would just, we would give them the green light and they would go? Is that everybody's understanding?
I'm curious, John.
Yeah, that
It's
was the
given that
intention.
it'll be likely landing on your plate, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Peter?
I could also volunteer to help and lend, since that's kind of been the last 35 years of my life.
That's your professional
right?
expertise, yeah. Okay, Richard, do you want to say anything more, or?
No, I think,
No.
That sounds good.
Okay, Franz?
Thank you, Daniel. So one of the inspirational things that I've seen that relates to this was what happened at the pop-up drop-in center when it opened up mostly a year and a half ago now, down at the transportation center. And the clientele there, the people who were accessing services through that pop-up center, made their own rules. They decided, and I don't know, I wasn't part of that process, but they wanted that to be an area where there was no use of drugs and alcohol, for example, and that basically they told people who came there to spend time and get food and get other necessities, et cetera, that there were expectations and things that they couldn't do there. And not that, if you wanted to do those things, okay, but you got to go somewhere else. You can't do that here. And I thought that was really outstanding, that that was from the bottom up, that kind of bubbled up from the most affected people in that situation. And so the way that's inspirational to me in this situation is that I'd like to see that bubbling up happen again, at least as one of the inputs into the process. And I would see the process as evolving a little more slowly. I think the community safety fair that we're anticipating at the end of this month would be a place to get input on that. I think this would be a great place for focus groups, that focus groups of people on the street, people in the social service agencies, who would have some input into, okay, what behaviors are we really talking about, and what messages do we want to deliver about those behaviors and those factors of life, et cetera, that would resonate for the people who we're expecting to adhere to and participate in the life of the town. So anyway, I'm kind of, most of what we've been looking at here, I think, has been a little bit more from the top down, that we're gonna tell people, the community, et cetera, here's how we see it, this is what we expect you to do. I'd rather see it come from the other direction, at least in part, of what do people think is a reasonable set of standards, and then I think that'll be easier to get people to participate in and adhere to if we do it that way. So I'd slow down a little bit and wait for the community fair, and as I say, I think focus groups of the different types of community members that we're looking towards, to include them in this process right from the start, rather than try to impose something from the top down and then see how it's working. That would be my approach.
Question.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, in a messaging campaign, if you are trying to correct behavior, let's just say that's what we're trying to do, so you're going to ask the person whose behavior you're trying to correct what message they would hear to correct their behavior? Is that what I'm understanding? If I'm boiling down what you just said,
Well, I think that's
what I
maybe a little overboiled, but that could be one of the things that happens. But, you know, I've spoken to people over the past few months who had some really good ideas about how their segments of the community could participate in this. And, you know, we can say they're unhoused or homeless or they're drug users or whatever it is, but that getting the input from that community will make this more effective. So yes, I do think that.
so, and I will tell you that is something that will stop this thing dead in its tracks. All right, as somebody who's been doing this kind of work for as long as I've been doing it, that is not such a, did somebody have something to say?
Go ahead, Peter. Keep going, Peter. Peter?
Yeah. So, we know this community, we know what we've been dealing with this community. We're not going to ask an outside agency to come in and do it. We know the way we want people to behave on our streets. That includes me. That includes somebody who might be less fortunate than me, might be more fortunate than me. We all are expected to hold a certain level when we are on our streets. So, most everybody thinks we are targeting the unhoused. I have never mentioned the unhoused, the homeless, or have I?
Peter, can you not?
Well,
I understand it's
then do
distracting.
something.
Yeah. Just give me a second, okay? So, would you mind not interrupting, please? There will be time for public. Yeah. Be reasonable, come on. Thank you. Peter. I am, thank you.
So that is just, when we are rolling it out, it seems like what has happened here is narratives have been snatched, as is on display tonight, right? As a direction that this committee, that this board wants to step in. So it's a narrative that's hold, and it's got a strong toehold right now. And if we don't do something sooner than roll out, and I'm not talking about making this decision in a vacuum. I have been speaking with the people who run our social network in our agencies about what the message should be, getting their response firsthand. But I think, you know, forming 400 meetings around it will just kill it.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to weigh in, and I have pretty mixed feelings about this project. I think the first thing I would want to kind of really speak about is the town's expertise in this area. This is not personal about John's skill set. It's kind of thinking about what's on our town manager's plate right now, and quite frankly, it is a very, very full plate. So whether we want to add this work, which is, I would say, not in our kind of natural scope. I don't know. You know, I think the messages that I've seen here in the memo, there's not a lot here that I like. So I think if we are to proceed in this way, I would want to see something different than what's here. It sounds like there are 4 people that want to proceed with the campaign, so maybe that'll happen. If these were the messages that we would be putting out, that's not something that I feel like I would be excited about this. I do think it's okay to actually hear from other people involved, and it sounds like you have, right? But I haven't, and I don't know if John has in composing these. So I think hearing from people like Groundworks, people like HCRS,
Turning Point.
Turning Point, yeah, that would be helpful. People like the retreat. You know, we actually already have a body of people working together under the one Brattleboro group. We had a meeting on Friday. It was really productive. Getting a little bit of input from them, you know, I think could be part of our process. And so if this is to proceed, I would like us to at least consider that as an option. And then, I mean, I think I'll leave it there for now. Okay. Liz.
Can I present a motion?
Sure.
At this time, or do you want to hear from the public
No, that's
first,
fine.
or-
That's
okay.
fine.
Okay. I move to implement an acceptable community conduct campaign amended to work with interested parties as selected by town staff, which will not include public signage.
Okay. Thank you. I'm slow at writing. Okay. Fine. Okay, so Liz has made a motion to implement an acceptable community conduct campaign as amended, and the amendment is about working with interested parties as selected by town staff and not doing a poster campaign.
Public signs,
Oh, okay, and not doing public signs.
because posters might be part of it, but not, you know, like municipal sign type thing.
Oh, okay, all right. Interesting. Okay, so, board, you want to talk about that motion? Definitely want to hear from the public as well.
Well, I think that's fine. It leaves it up to the town staff to decide how to engage with the public. There could be a variety of ways of doing that, but, you know, I think they could probably handle that
I think they
decision-making.
could, yes.
Okay. Okay, all right, let's hear from the public. So members of the public who wish to speak, raise your hand. We've got a few people on Zoom, so let's go to Zoom first, and then we'll come back to the room. I think the first person with their hand raised is David.
It's David.
Yeah, thank you, yeah. Hi, David, welcome. If you could just introduce yourself.
And unmute
Tell him that he's
yourself.
muted, David.
Yeah.
I have to keep on unmuting myself. I'm just, you got me, David Blistam, District 9. And I should say, you know, I used to own what they now call a strategic communications firm in the 80s and 90s, a little bit in the aughts, and they now call it an ad agency. We used to call it an ad agency, a strategic communications. So I have a little bit of expertise in this, and I totally agree with Christina, who talked way at the beginning. You know, the ordinance is far more complex than we could expect the target audiences or even myself to grasp comprehensively. So you might be surprised. My professional opinion is to do nothing at the moment. And the reason is this. You have two target audiences. That's what we used to say in the trade. One is maybe 50 to 100 people who spend a lot of time on the street in ways that concern people, and perhaps they're breaking laws. But you already have Officer Washburn, who should be added, enhanced with other people, who's really great at communicating, is very much trusted with them. And Ava and some of the other outreach people from Groundworks who are equally good and also trusted. You know, people like Kaz at the co-op and a few sympathetic but concerned retailers, including Fish, who regularly talk with people in the targeted audience, who are, I must point out, your neighbors, okay? If they can figure out how to communicate this, if Officer Washburn and the others can go out on the street and talk to people and figure out what it takes to communicate this stuff, then if they need support materials, if they need a handout card or something, fine. And you can authorize that. As far as the community goes, the best way to change, is to have the plan work. Once it works, then people will be convinced. But if people, particularly retailers, think they have to communicate to their customers after seeing what's working, what's not, that's the Chamber of Commerce and Downtown Business Alliance, from my perspective. So as a professional, I just say you do nothing right now. You'll get to see how this works person to person, which is always good before putting up signs, and you'll save a little money, right? You might even see ways that the ordinance should be adjusted a little bit. And the one thing I do want to say is that communicating that people shouldn't give money to panhandlers perpetuates a myth that money is spent on nothing but drugs. There are legitimate needs that our social service agencies and Groundworks people admit it. That we don't have they don't have the resources to meet. They don't always have the resources to meet co-pays for essential prescriptions. They don't always have the resources to meet in a timely way clothing needed for last minute offers of day work boots, service uniforms. I've helped people with that. Some people really need a phone with a reliable callback number. Some people need gender-specific supplies that I've been asked for help with late at night when the drop-in center is not working. And there are things like gas money for places the bus can't take them when they need them. And frankly, it's a controversial subject, but methadone or Suboxone, when they have a gap in their ability to pay or be served by a clinic and their alternatives doing dope. So I say go to the experts. The experts are Officer Washburn, people at Groundworks, and have them spend a month or two trying to explain what can be explained in person. And then you figure out what materials you need. Hope that helps.
Thanks, David. Let's come back to the room. Penelope? Do you want to come to the microphone, please?
Yeah.
It's so people on BCTV can hear you.
Yeah, it's Penelope Were. I've got sort of a little sidetracked here now because I had wanted to talk about what we could do if this ordinance was put into place.
So
but
this
now
is
it
about
looks
a
like we're
messaging
still
campaign.
discussing. Yeah, okay. Well, I slightly agree with you about the idea of putting signage up. I'm not sure whether that is actually constructive. However, I do know also, because I spoke to Kate at DBA, and she does not want to have any involvement in signage and would prefer it to be something that the community downtown did. But that being said, I do still feel very strongly that we need to do something. And I do understand that there are people who are on the street who have needs that are probably not being met. But at the same time, we have businesses whose needs are not being met. And right now, there are an enormous number of my customers who are not coming downtown because they get hassled. So I did have one suggestion, and this is sort of slightly sidetracking from what I was talking about. I appreciate all the work that has gone into this ordinance. However, I think it is going to take a long time to repair the perception that Brattleboro is an unsafe place to come and also a hassle, and that's mainly because of the panhandling. Can I suggest that we put a significant amount of energy into dispelling this image and try to think of some creative ways to get what were our regular customers back into town? I really do think this is essential because they're just not coming downtown right now. And I've spoken to so many of my customers who say they're not coming downtown right now, very specifically because as soon as they get out of their car door, somebody's hitting them up for cash or just you know, kind of intercepting them for one reason or another. So my suggestion, and I know you're not going to probably be interested in this, but I'd like to suggest that we look at having a couple of days a week, just a couple of days a week, preferably Wednesday and Thursday, when we had free parking from 4 to 6 o'clock at night. Maybe we could encourage some shops like me to stay open late, because I very often do already stay open late on Thursday, Friday, and
Penelope,
Saturday.
you're out
I've
of
gone
time,
over my time.
unfortunately,
Okay,
yeah.
just quickly, this one last thing. I think that maybe this could be achieved by changing the hours in the morning. Could we collect another hour in the morning or something?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I hear what you're saying, and we're
Thank
trying to
you.
kind of keep this about the messaging campaign,
Yeah.
and I definitely heard some about that in there. Okay, so gonna go back to Zoom. I think Robin is next. Hi, Robin.
Hello. Hi. I really, sorry. I'm Robin Morgan. I live in Brattleboro. I am a mom of 3 school-aged kids and a concerned community member. And I could not be more opposed to this messaging campaign. I think that it has an overall effect of demonizing struggling people. And I feel really concerned that the messaging of we've got to put our foot down and stop these people is going to result in actual violence to these people who are already in a position that no one would want to be in. And I also really want to speak to the myth that David referenced, that people who are asking for money are only going to use it on drugs. It's been shown over and over and over again that when people say that their main problem is that they don't have enough money, and then we give them money, the problems vastly improve. Now, people who are panhandling are not getting the kind of money that's going to provide a substantial ability to improve their life. They're getting dribs and drabs of a few dollars at a time. But if someone needs that to buy maxi pads or put gas in their car, then I'm going to keep giving it to them. And I'm going to violate any campaign that is passed along the lines that are in this memo. I think that if we want to consider ourselves a compassionate community, this ain't it. And I'm just speechless that this is what we're considering putting our energy and resources towards, instead of actually substantially improving the conditions that are causing people to be in this visible struggle. When I read the one that said, Brattleboro is not a good place to be unhoused, go somewhere else. Nowhere is a good place to be unhoused. Being unhoused is terrible. It's the worst thing that can happen to someone short of actual, illness, injury, or death, and maybe even including those things in some cases. So we don't need a messaging campaign to tell people that being unhoused sucks, whether it's here or anywhere else. What we need is to take action so that there's less people who are in that struggling condition. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Ava, did you want to speak?
I'm Ava, I work in Brattleboro. I just had a quick point, which was that I don't think a stigmatizing messaging campaign will help people out of their drug addiction, and the behaviors that we're trying to target are often either people in crises or who are people who are mainly affected by opioid use disorder. And I agree with Penelope in some ways. I think that we want Brattleboro to be, I can speak for myself, I want Brattleboro to be a lovely place to be in. I still think it is. I really love it here. And there are ways that are not stigmatizing that could bring more joy to our streets. And I think bringing more joy and more community and more active people on the streets enjoying themselves will also improve our perceptions of safety. I think people feel safer when they see more people out and about. And there are businesses, but there are also things lacking in what you can do in downtown Brattleboro. I'm not gonna sit here and try to brainstorm those right now, but I think there's other quality of life measures that we could take in downtown Brattleboro to improve public safety. And then I'm not going to be a broken record and talk about the lack of services and the difficulties of getting into recovery, because we've talked about that at many past meetings, but those are on my mind too. So I don't think that a messaging campaign will be very effective at what you're trying to accomplish, and I hope you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't read that name. Patrick, help me. Ray? Welcome. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
I'm a Brattleboro resident, and I deeply oppose this ordinance this messaging campaign that feels like it is a tailed addition to the ordinance that was just passed last meeting, and feels like a stark disappointment to like the amount of work and labor that has been going on in our town to support people that are considered undesirable, which, as much as you want to say this is like not about unhoused people, this is not about people dealing with addictions, drug use disorders, yada yada. Like, I keep hearing different members of the select board saying this isn't about them, but it's obviously very clear over and over again that it is. And I think that if you really wanted to like hear from these other organizations that you think you would collaborate with to get these messaging campaigns more effective, you should have been listening for the last couple months and really heeding what people are saying about like not giving the police department more money, not giving this ordinance so much power. Like, I think there's like actually a lot of solutions in front of you that you're ignoring that would really help with behaviors you're sick of seeing. And I think that it's pretty, honestly, I'm disgusted by the way that these conversations are happening amongst the select board. And I don't trust or believe in any of your power to have like humanity in what you're doing right now. It feels very disappointing. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Other members of the public, go Jane and then Frick.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Jane, and I am a Brattleboro resident, and I grew up in Brattleboro. On Sunday, there were some folks who gathered at the transit center and shared food and music and color and sound, and a police officer came up and was questioning them and very distrustful. And I just want to share that, like, if a campaign like this was attempted in Brattleboro, there'll just be more people bringing more sound and color and liveliness into the streets to share that we consent when we look someone in the eye and they ask us for help and we hand them some money. And I do not consent to my money being handed to the police department because 6 people voted, or some amount of people of the 6 voted for it, and some percentage of the population say that it's a good idea. And I don't consent to the amount of money being proposed on the swimming pool, but I do consent when someone asks me for help. The messaging campaign reminds me of a very popular billboard campaign that was national in the U.S. in the 2000s-ish, when obesity was invented as a health crisis. And instead of consulting and talking to people who experience having a body that doesn't fit the standards of acceptable or like beauty standards, there was a campaign that it ultimately stigmatized and shamed children and their families for having the bodies they have. And again, like, body shape and access to housing are very complex things that people are brought to the situations they're in and the lives that they live from many factors. And looking at signs is not going to adjust those things. I also am concerned by about the safety of unhoused people, because on a couple occasions I've witnessed people asking for money and then being lectured at by folks who are in town to shop or to eat food that they pay money for. And I do have concern that those situations are already very, very encouraged because of the culture we have around visibly unhoused people, or visibly in crisis people. And I think that there's no need for a messaging campaign, actually. I think that people already have a lot of bias against the people who look poor, whatever indicators of poorness there are. So I don't think there's a need for it, and I think that there should be more robust systems to create a culture that is actually caring and joyful and full of sound and music and culture that connects people together and shares public space in a healthy and safe way.
Thanks, Jane.
Thank you.
Frick?
Hi, Frick Sprite, District 9 Rep. I think there has been a lot of attempts here to narrow the subject. I think, Peter, you expressed it well in terms of trying to keep people accountable regardless of who they are. I think that there's a lot of good energy to do positive things here, but I don't hear on the same count a desire to create a sense of accountability. I personally know a lot of the people who are panhandling or, you know, in some sense or other, the demographic that has been talked about. And there's a variety of reasons that their lives are challenging, some self-inflicted and some not. Some people are just panhandling because they can make better money that way than working. Some of them have legitimate issues. Some of them are drug addicts who are out of control. Some of them, you know, those people are showing up in Amy's after closing and harassing them to you know, get fed or, you know, because she has been very generous, which is, you know, patently unfair to the people who work there, and you know, when that happens. So it is complicated, but you know, to pretend that nobody who is panhandling should be held accountable for their behavior, I think is as absurd as saying that none of them have legitimate needs. They're both true. There are people who are perfectly able-bodied who have refused work and have said outright that they make more money panhandling and why bother. And they don't have to pay taxes on that, which is damn convenient for them. I wish I could get away with that, but I actually don't desire to because I know where my taxes go and I know that the services that they provide are valuable to the majority of the community as applied to our town priorities by you guys and us at town meeting. So I'm just asking everybody to take into account the myriad of concerns and not try and ignore accountability. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken already that would like to speak? Okay, we have two people that would like to speak that have already spoken. I'm conscious of time.
One of them, sir, may not have.
Really? Okay, the second one?
Rune, I don't believe.
Okay, fine, yeah, let's hear from them. I need binoculars. Welcome, if you could just introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, my name is Rune. I work at a food access nonprofit in Brattleboro, and just want to say that I find this campaign really disturbing, and I feel like I'm questioning why the town and the select board are motioning to spend. I don't know how much money is going to be spent on this messaging campaign, but I'm assuming a considerable amount of money would be put into creating this propaganda. And a lot of it is like literally just telling people and individuals on the street not to give petty cash to people that are in need and that don't have access to resources. And I feel like that point has been home, but I don't understand why so much money would be funneled into a campaign that's against like a couple dollars being given to someone who might need it for gas or food or to get through their day, especially when it's claiming to be advocating for money being sent to these organizations that are then like social service organizations that could be helping these people. And instead, we're doing things like passing this ordinance and giving money to the cops. And a lot of that money could just be going to these organizations that you're claiming this campaign is in support of. So I just don't really understand that. And if there's any clarity about how much money would be spent on this campaign, that would be great. I'm of the opinion that I think that this campaign should just be rejected altogether. I also want to add that I feel like things like saying like it's okay to say no to panhandlers, like the people that are saying no are already saying no. And the people that are saying yes are just giving people a few dollars. And I don't really think that's something that we need to spend town money to prevent people from doing an act of generosity. And as it's already been said, it's a myth that that money is just going to go straight to drugs. It's not up to you or any of us to decide what people are going to spend their money on. I feel like we should be leaving it to organizations that actually have expertise in this area and to the people themselves that are going through these situations to say what they need and actually support them and be using, these community processes to have that input and not just ignore it and move these things forward. So I think that's all I have to say.
Anyone else who would like to speak that has not spoken already? Okay. Board, would you like to kind of come back to this discussion, or would you like to hear from David, who's already spoken once?
I'd like to hear from David.
I'd like to hear from David.
All right, let's hear from David, and then let's come back to the board.
Well, thanks for letting me speak again. I'm going to just talk very quickly from the perspective of an aging community. We all need to stop othering each other. We're not the rest of the United States. We don't need to other the police. As I say, Officer Washburn's one of the people that is most trusted by people on the street. We don't need to other the select board. We don't need to have the people who care so passionately about this othered. I think that that's the main issue. We have to find out who is really having the contact, as I mentioned, and find out what they need to communicate with. I don't want to make an advertising thing, but in the advertising world, you find out what the salespeople need. That's what you do. You don't just start issuing it from above. Find out what the salespeople need to make this very complicated ordinance comprehensible. That's all. Thanks for letting me speak again.
Thanks, David. Okay. Board, there is a motion on the floor. It's to implement an acceptable community conduct campaign as amended to work with interested parties as selected by town staff and not funding public signs. Is that accurate?
What's this last part of that? I didn't quite hear.
Not funding public signs. And Liz differentiated that from posters.
Because they may want to include posters that people put in shop windows, but I don't like the idea of a municipal sign.
Okay, fine. So that's the motion that's on the floor. Any further comments on it, questions about it, before we take some kind of action?
I think if I could.
Yep.
So what we've heard in the short amount of time from people who have spoken, and largely those who've been vocal tonight have not been in favor of a messaging campaign, but the narrative has been kind of set in those minds, again, as to what direction this would go. And I get it. All you really are having to work from is a memo that you might have read through once. I think that most of the people who have spoken tonight, at least when I'm thinking about this messaging, haven't sat down and talked to me and asked me what I thought and what direction that I would go in. And, so as much as everybody is offended as to the thought of what the direction they think this messaging is going to go, I'm offended at the thought that they think that I would take it there if it were left to me, right? So, Because the fact of the matter is, when it comes individual to individual, you know, we tend to kind of just demonize the body as the people who have to make the decision. I'm not here to tell people not to give money to somebody who might actually need money.
Could you not interrupt, please? Okay. Okay. It's respectful that we each just let each other speak. That's what I've been trying to do the whole night.
But I would be happy to speak with you after the meeting. Okay, so just get to know me before you.
And vice versa, my friend.
I'm
Great.
opening it up.
Sounds like
that
you guys are
conversation.
gonna make that happen.
We're gonna
Keep
make
going.
it happen. So, you know, I think that this campaign could wind up in a million different directions. And again, I said earlier, it's nothing I'm looking to make, I wouldn't make in a vacuum. I've had conversations as to the direction something like that would have an impact and would be a positive impact. Would that impact lead us to a messaging campaign about putting up a grandstand in the Preston lot? I don't know. Music, light, I'm just saying. No, I mean, it's something, and I'm not being sarcastic, I'm being dead serious. Like, I get it. But there are just some times now where we're at a stage, I think, right now, where we sort of just need to get our arms around it a little bit and set the expectation for all concerned. Not just, you know, and I hate the word panhandling, I can't stand it. You know, that, and I'm not targeting anybody, we're not targeting those people, but we are trying to come up with something that holds everybody accountable. And that's really kind of where I'm at.
Thanks, Peter. Can I ask you, so you have decades of professional experience in communications. The messages here in this memo, these are examples. These are not like, you know, set in stone. Are there messages here that you really support? And I'm putting you on the spot, so feel free to, you know.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I've had conversations with John about how, and we've talked about very specific ones that I'm like, this is like these are non-starters, these are not, you know, but they are things that have been pulled from conversations that have been had with people and the messaging that they want. I think, you know, I know people are still trying to pull a panhandling ordinance, which is just a non-starter, as we know, right? So, you know, and some of that kind of feels like that a little bit. So, you know, if you were to give me some time to talk with organizations, to work with John, if, you know, and I'm sorry, I keep throwing myself into the loop here.
I think that's fine.
That's, you know, I don't mean to like overstep. But I think we could come up with some options. And look, I'm here to say, like, messaging isn't for everybody. Not everybody's gonna like those messages, you know? But sometimes you just have to kind of roll it out and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, then you pivot, but it should be simple, it should be easy to understand. It should talk about a compassionate community that's inclusive, and we want to kind of keep it that way. And as long as we are all behaving accordingly with some accountability, I think we can get there, you know? And all of this stuff doesn't happen quickly. You don't throw out a campaign and it doesn't work the next day. It's just not how it works. It's a long grind.
Thanks.
Okay. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. Other thoughts? There's a motion on the floor.
Danny, when you're done,
Yeah.
I have one question for you.
Why don't you ask it right now?
I didn't see anything where there was a dollar amount attached to this campaign and nothing in the motion as to not to exceed. So if you could just talk about that little aspect for me.
Thanks, Dick. John?
You want to hear about that?
Yeah.
So you, as part of the Downtown Safety Action Plan, you set aside $10,000 for public messaging. That could be used for this or for other things. It's, you know, we weren't, yeah, I think with Liz's motion, it takes out a lot of the cost that would be associated with this, so I think it would be a nominal amount that we would spend on this.
Okay.
We're talking about public service announcements.
Yeah,
which are not free.
depends on who you know.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Okay. Other board members, comments, questions? We've got a motion to consider. Okay, absent that, I appreciate your clarification. I still don't love any of these examples. I don't love how they sound. I don't love the messages in them. If that is what ended up being this campaign, I'd be really unhappy about it. And that's not to denigrate people that did this work, you know, because we're saying this isn't about people asking for money, but here's a message that says asking people for money hurts our community. I strongly believe in individuals' rights to choose what to do with their hard-earned money. And every time I have, you know, somebody ask me for money, I make a choice. Some days I choose yes, some days I choose no, you know, and I have my own private secret reasons for all of that. And I think it should just, that, we're not actually able to make any kind of change legally about that stuff anyway. So really we would just be saying here, like, would you mind not? And you know, that's not a message I'm gonna support for my own personal, private, secret reasons. You know, and so like, I'm a little encouraged to hear kind of what Peter's talking about in terms of like working together on this. I think, you know, Liz's amendment around working with interested parties, like I'd want Groundworks to be involved. I think the people that David named, you know, Officer Washburn, Ava, who's sitting there, who's half of the Groundworks outreach team, Peter Fish-Case, who's sitting here, Kaz from the co-op, those people have some insight. You know, if we can at least have one meeting with those people in a room, you know, to kick around this stuff, I'd be okay with that, right? And then I trust, you know, our town leadership that what would come out of that would be something that they think that the select board would be into. I'd like to see a draft maybe.
Can I just,
Yeah, go ahead.
can I broaden it a little bit?
Yeah, yeah.
Right? So I'll just take it from your perspective. You see this stuff, you don't like much of it. You know, I've drilled in a little bit more into the process. Now you're a little bit more comfortable with it. So now the next step is to widen that a little bit more and involve those agencies that you talked about, but not like committees of people, like people who are out there actively making decisions on behalf of these agencies, and maybe somebody that works
Like people
with them.
doing work on
Like,
this.
yeah, you know, like I'm like targeting like Ava might
Right.
be a perfect one to ask, or Libby, you know, on how these things roll out. Josh Davis would be a good person to ask, you know, and invite
Me?
you
You know.
if Josh will let you off.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, and have those people, and then come up with, based on those conversations, come up with some more examples, and then maybe go back to those people, have another meeting, and go, here's kind of what we were thinking, what do you think of this, and tweaking it. I mean, that is when you're driving campaigns like this, I think that is where you end up, and then maybe you just end up with a small, like, kind of a congregate answer.
Thanks, Peter. Franz?
Well, I'd like to say that that's pretty much what I was proposing half an hour ago or so.
Okay.
That we draw other people into this discussion, especially ones who have a basis for understanding the situations that people face. But I think right now we're getting a little too specific on that. The motion calls for letting the town staff sort through this and come up with proposals and then presumably bring it back to us. But I don't think we should go beyond that at this point in terms of designating who should be involved in that process. I think that's up to the staff to determine, and I support this motion with that understanding.
Okay, fine. And I think we're giving some feedback around who we consider. We're not saying
Well,
must
I
be.
think that should be done in a considered fashion and not just off the cuff. That's what
Okay.
I'm saying.
Okay, thank you. Liz?
Yeah.
I just want to bring us back to the original original thought that Peter and actually the Boys and Girls Club had for a campaign like this. And it didn't, it involved children, and it involved really the basis of the ordinance, which is let's have Flat Street as an area where people will feel comfortable in bringing their children. And let's say someone could walk from the Boys and Girls Club to the New England Youth Theater. Like, I think that's the core message that we want, not necessarily panhandling, not panhandling, but just civilized behavior that is not threatening to our youth.
Okay, thank you. I see your hand. I have a hand here. I'm going to go there first. Richard.
I just wanted to say that I agree with Franz, and I think if we pass a motion that this is just a baby step, but this is what we have to do now instead of trying to do a whole bunch of things at one time, and so that's what I would urge.
Okay, and so what your understanding is that this, if we were to accept this motion, it would be moving this project further forward, but it would be coming back to the select board for approval?
That's what
Is
I
that
would like
everybody
to
else's
see.
understanding?
That's mine.
That's what I'd like.
Okay, seeing nods. Okay, fine. I've got a bunch of people in the public with their hand up. I'm actually trying to land this right now, and I think the board is ready to make a vote. Yeah, if you want to keep it real short, but then I have to have all these people keep their things real short as well. Is it going to be helpful to this board's decision making? Okay, go right ahead. I'll give you 1 minute. How about that?
I haven't properly introduced myself. I don't currently work for an organization in town, but I have 15 years of experience of daily organizing on the street with homeless people. I am currently in communication with people who are unhoused on our streets right now and about to be unhoused in all the motel programs. I can offer you anything you want in private. When you talk about children, there are so many children who are unhoused in this town and about to be way more. So talking about the safety of children, it doesn't sound like, at last time we were here, you talked about the fact that we need more cops because people are about to be evicted from motels. That is absolutely stigmatizing the children, disabled people, veterans, everyone who's about to be unhoused. So that's, when we talk about like safety on the streets and children, there are so many children. People are panhandling on behalf of their children. Again, I'm in daily contact with people. I know the people who are literally panhandling for money, for diapers, or I'm bringing them diapers. That's the only way they can get diapers. Do you know how much diapers cost? And yeah, what time am I at?
I wanted to keep it to a minute.
Okay,
And that's that. Thank you.
Consider all the children, please.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, so in the spirit of equity, I'm going to hear from these two folks as well for 1 minute, and then we're going to come back. The first person, I think, is Ray.
I'm sorry, you said.
Yep. Oh, okay.
Oh,
They have
looks like
gone,
we've
so
had
I'm
a drop
guessing.
off.
Doran. Doran, I'm going to give you 1 minute.
Be as succinct as possible. My name is Doran Ham. I'm a teacher in Brattleboro. I teach at the New England Youth Theater and longtime resident voter, taxpayer. I just don't. I don't know who wants this besides the select board. I want to hear like why this campaign exists, because I feel like just it doesn't make any sense. I just like feel like it's I'm crashing my head against like I don't know the wall. So I just don't know why we're pushing forward a campaign to take more money. And yeah, I'm a teacher in town. I just don't disagree. I just don't agree with this. I don't know if any of the people at the New England Theater would even agree with this. So I just want to.
Thanks, Doran. All right, going to come back to the board. So there was a motion on the floor. There still is. It's to implement an acceptable community conduct campaign as amended, and that amendment is to work with interested parties as selected by town staff and not funding public signs. Are you ready for that vote? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 5-0. Okay. We're going to move on to the next item of business, which is the housing plan update. Sue, thank you for waiting. Sue Fillion is our planning director. We are always working on housing. Sue is here to report back on that work.
Yeah, so I thought I'd give you a update on kind of where we are, projects that we've been discussing with people out in the community, permitting activity that we've had, and just kind of some things that we're working on, and other kind of statutory, big statutory changes that will affect some of the work that we're doing. You may recall the housing needs assessment conservatively estimated that we had a need for 519 units. In the report I gave you, indicated that we had issued permits for 51 housing units in 2024. That's the highest we've had in quite a number of years. And actually, when I wrote this report, it was at the end of August, so actually we're up to 60 units now. And that's with losing some units as well, so we calculated both. This is the best measure that we have at this time to kind of track the number of housing units that we, are seeing come online. Some of them will take some time. In fact, we just learned that the Veselka, the development at the old TD Bank, they just got their occupancy permit from the state fire marshal. So, that's 13 units that were permitted No. They had, were in, I think they were in last year's numbers, maybe earlier this year, and they're just coming online now. So, some of the observations kind of are directly related to the actions that the select board has taken, including in 2023 when we made some significant amendments to the zoning, the land use regulations. We had included a missing middle housing overlay district where it was intended to make certain housing typologies easier in our walkable neighborhoods that have access to water and sewer. Things such as row homes, quadplexes, duplexes, triplexes, and some newer kind of typologies like cottage courts. 26 of the housing units that we've permitted have come through that missing middle housing overlay district. So that's been really effective. That overlay district reduces permitting costs. It makes these uses permitted uses, and a lot of them can be administered by the zoning administrator without having to go to the development review board. So that shortens up time periods and just makes development more predictable, which builders and developers appreciate. We're seeing private development of multi-unit projects for the first time in several years. So a lot of local builders are taking on projects. Sometimes it's homeowners or property owners that are doing it on their own. So we don't have a big development community in southern Vermont, so it's nice that we're seeing multi-unit projects being taken on by private, kind of smaller people taking on development. And what we've also heard is that people have increased the number of units that they're building because they are getting Act 250 exemptions by the fact that we are we have the neighborhood development area. So that's been significant. That was, I think, something the select board had supported. It maybe was in late 2022. We did that purposely for some of the exemptions and reduction in state permitting fees that you could get by being in a neighborhood development area. So it's nice to see that play out. In addition, what we've learned from talking with the people who are doing these developments is that the construction supply shortage that we experienced since the COVID pandemic is beginning to ease. Construction labor still remains a shortage, but we are actually starting to see contractors from Massachusetts and outside of our area starting to do business in roofing and other kind of construction. And there was a recently permitted development of 5 small single cottages, where is estimated to come in at under $200 per square foot in construction. So that's significantly lower than what, the numbers that we had been seeing. In terms of the housing pipeline, I think a lot of these projects you've probably read about in the newspaper, or maybe you've had some of them come before you here at your meetings. And these projects are in various stages of development, ranging from concept planning to actually putting together financing. And they are a mix of affordable and market rate housing. Most of the permit activity that I had just spoken about was primarily market rate housing. But these are a mix of it. So about the 10 units at 12 and 14 Elliott Street, which I think you supported a community development block grant application for recently. There's discussions of 18 units at the former ST Organ factory. 29 units, some of this, which is showing in the permit housing activity, is for 29 units in West Brattleboro Village. It's the former motel. Let's see, the Chalet is talking about redevelopment and infill. They went before the Development Review in September, Development Review Board in September for sketch plan review. Phase 1 will be 30 units of multifamily housing, 15 of which would be permanent supportive housing, and then 5 duplexes in the first phase, and those would be homeownership units. I think their total project, they're looking at about 70 units. They're looking at redeveloping the remaining buildings at Melrose Terrace. I think that's early, but those discussions have been going on. There's the Winston Prouty campus infill project. Phase 1 would probably be around 26 to 40 units. You've heard presentations, total project, numbers are varying, but somewhere up around 300 units total. World Learning approached the Planning Commission about upzoning some of their land. I'm going to talk about that. They are thinking about doing some housing development on some parcels that they own, not on the main campus. And then estimating around 30 units of other private development multifamily projects that we've had discussions about. Some of the work that we're doing and that will continue and some we'll be bringing back to you is the Planning Commission is doing targeted mailing to property owners, alerting them of the 2023 zoning changes to encourage housing. These are kind of going to be targeted. The first one, they're actually reviewing a draft letter that one of the planning commissioners wrote at their Monday meeting, and that's geared towards our service center zoning district, which is Putney Road, so some of those large parcels. So, we're not going to end up doing a whole mailing to the whole town, but we're going to kind of be strategic about that. You'll see the vacant building ordinance back for a reading this fall. And I mention this because, we're hoping that that's something that will help property owners, will trigger redevelopment of some of those properties. I know of at least one property that's vacant that is a single-family home that could be redeveloped into something else. I'll be back before you to share some ideas for funding programs with the money that you set aside from the revolving loan fund. Back to the request from World Learning, when they came to the Planning Commission to ask for a rezoning request. And in this summer, in some of the new state statute, state legislative changes, there were some clarifications. So there's a provision in state statute that if there's water and sewer service to a site, that you have to have a minimum density of 5 units per acre. We have a couple areas of town, including the SIT parcels, which are not zoned appropriately in accordance with state statute. So we're doing a little research into that. We know that another area that's got water and sewer either to the parcels or in the road, so that's kind of counts as to the parcels, is Old Guilford Road area, like the former Vabec campus and all the way down to Fort Dummer. That area is not zoned appropriately. That area has some constraints. I've been talking with Public Works, so we're trying to understand what the constraints are, and then the Planning Commission will decide how they, what they would recommend for upzoning. Let's see, another legislative change that is kind of, is a big one and will take some time for us to work through is in the Act 250 reform measures. They've set up the framework of a process for Brattleboro to kind of become exempt from Act 250. Basically, we take on a lot of that review. And the rule making should be done by January of 2026. So it appears there's a couple of areas that we need to look into our land use regulations to have those all set to be able to apply for that kind of Tier 1A designation. But that would be a very positive thing for development in Brattleboro. Again, getting to those issues of saving money by reducing uncertainty in development. So that's something that the department is interested in looking into. We continue to participate in the Housing Coalition, and that is kind of an open meeting, so if select board members are interested, the main Housing Coalition meeting is the second Monday of the month at 3 o'clock. It's quarterly we meet in person, but otherwise it's regularly, it's a Zoom meeting. Because of Indigenous People Day, the October meeting's on October 21st, and there's going to be a presentation by Vermont Housing Finance Agency of the State Housing Needs Assessment. So I can share that if any of you are interested in attending those meetings. And the last thing I wanted to mention is the Vermont Statewide Housing Conference is going to be held November 14th in South Burlington. Liz, I think you've been in the past. It's a very good conference. It's held every 2 years, so can share information.
What's the date on that again?
It's November 14th.
In Burlington?
In South Burlington.
South Burlington.
Yeah. And so staff from our department will be going. But there's lots of tracks on policy, on housing services. There's one on clean energy and housing affordability. And the keynote speaker is, her name is escaping me. I have it written down, but she wrote The Sum of Us, if anybody's aware of that book.
Great.
So,
Thanks, Sue.
you're welcome.
Anything else you want to add? I felt like you were wrapping up, but I just want to...
I don't think I mentioned it, but the housing development, and maybe I did, I'm sorry, but the housing development, the permits that we've issued this year are mostly coming in the form of multi-unit. So we're not seeing as much single-unit development this year.
Okay, thank you. Select board members with questions. Liz.
Not so much a question, but a comment. Sue, I would just like to thank you for your long-term leadership on this and following up to our housing plan. I think, that our legislator often says that the planning and zoning regulations that we have in Brattleboro are a model statewide for encouraging housing development. And I thank you for that.
Thanks.
I also think you do an excellent job of incorporating and understanding the new state regulations as they would apply to Brattleboro and to provide responsible more housing. The only question, I have two questions really. What do you think a rough estimate of the overall yield from these SIT parcels would there be?
I was trying to think what they presented to the Housing Coalition and told us, I think one parcel they were looking at maybe 100 units and the other was maybe around 80.
Cool. So they're thinking big.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
And then the last question I had was, I think with our ARPA money, we chose to have you initiate a study of vacant parcels.
Yes.
Is that in the works somewhere?
Yeah, not vacant parcels, it's the town-owned parcels.
Town-owned
And
parcels.
Yes, and we did the first part and presented that to you. I
Right.
need to do a little refinement, so.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sue.
Great, thanks. Other questions? Ross?
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Daniel. So I was motivated to go back and look at the actual housing report, which I looked, read a couple of times previously, but it seems like the more I read it, the more I understand it. And it's really got a lot of high-quality thinking in here. I went to the strategy session in particular, where you have your 4 strategies and then the tactics and sub-tactics, et cetera. There's just so much in here to think about and work on. And I wanted to ask about some of the things, and I'm sort of wondering how you prioritize within this whole bunch of good ideas. Right from the get-go, strategy 1A is to pursue mapping and study to identify potential sites, both publicly and privately owned. And I think this letter writing thing that you just talked about is a great idea. Although I wonder, if I were a property owner, somewhere in town and I got a letter like that, I'm not sure how much attention I would, it'd sort of be, okay, it's in the mail. But is there anything more in-depth that you're planning to do after that? I've been driving around. I actually took some pictures earlier of vacant parcels up on Putney Road. And they just look perfect for development. I know a couple of people who own some of them, business people in town. And these are just, these aren't even parking lots. These are just dirt, waiting for, a 20 or 25 unit condo to be built there or something like that. So, I think there's tremendous potential. And I'm wondering, are you, I know we identified a couple of places of town-owned land, but I think the privately owned land is maybe more difficult, but more promising also in terms of development. What are you thinking about all that?
So Steve Hayes in the planning department has done a lot of good GIS work, kind of looking at the parcels. He's basically using what we did to evaluate the town parcels and trying to take it out townwide. So it's something he works on as there's time. So I think we'll use that to identify some of the parcels, and then we can do outreach in other ways.
Yeah, I think the outreach is really critically important. It's got to, there's a certain activation energy that you've got to achieve in making those things happen, I think. I'd very much encourage you to continue with that. There's so many other things here, but, there's finding a regional assisted living and or independent living developer. Has there been any progress on that? Is there anybody in that category we know of?
So staff has not done any work on that. There is a group in town that is looking at housing needs for seniors. So I don't know if they've contacted any, but they come to the Housing Coalition and present. They have a good, I think it's Wyndham Aging, I think is the group.
Right, yeah.
And there's actually a couple of other groups that have been looking at senior housing as well. It's continually identified as a need for the region. So
you mentioned that 5-unit cottage development that's right in my neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
I was walking right by there today. That is not a big lot.
Mm-mm.
It's like about 1.5 times a normal house lot, I would say. And I think it's great that they're going to be able to put 5 smallish, not tiny, but I was talking to the guy who's doing the demolition work yesterday, and he said they're going to be 1,200 square feet each, the 5 cottages, which is a decent size. Especially for like senior housing. That's perfect, and if that can be done on that lot, that can be done in lots of places in town. And again, it would be finding the property owners who'd be willing to participate. So I think that's really important. And I'm gonna stop there, even though I have
Sounds like you should have lunch with Sue sometime.
Well, I would like to.
Yeah. I can't speak for Sue's calendar. Other questions?
Thank
No?
you, sir.
So, Sue, I really appreciate the work that your department does. You know, the housing action plan was something that came to us in the earlier part of the pandemic. We were just back to meeting in person. We were in the firehouse. You know, there was a lot in there, a lot to read, a lot to grapple with, a lot of proposed strategies. You know, obviously we can't pursue everything all at once. We have a planning department of 3 people, 4 people, I guess. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, the unnamed person who I forgot.
We know who it was.
No, I actually was like, I don't know which one I was forgetting. Somebody. Anyway, so I really appreciate the work. And, you know, I think Franz's point about like the cottage development, it's like when you when people see these things happen in town, it's a model, and then it spurs hopefully some, you know, other people who might have a similar situation to also try that. And I know that when folks come with questions to your department, you guys are a really great source of information for them. So yeah, just much thanks. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else? No? Members of the public? I'm going to say Frick was first, and then Dick, and then whomever else.
Rick Sprite, District 9 Rep.
Questions this way?
What?
This way.
That was a statement,
Talk to
not a
Daniel.
question.
Address me.
Western Avenue, right? Anyway, I would like to echo the board's appreciation for Sue and the efforts to make things more flexible and more predictable. That is key to improving the situation and getting things moving. I would like to continue to caution the planning department to remember that we need places for jobs as well as places to live. So let's not give that up. I would like to remember the 4th member of the planning department, which I believe is Stephen Dodson, who is our sustainability coordinator and has helped keep the Energy Committee on track, of which I am also a member. And anybody who's interested in issues of energy in town should feel free to contact us at the Energy Committee, sit in our meetings or whatever. I would also encourage people who are thinking about development to talk to Stephen or myself or anybody on the Energy Committee or a variety of other people in town who could help make these projects more sustainable from an energy standpoint. I'm the holder of one of those building permits for 2 units. And the planning department has been fantastic to deal with on that. Unfortunately, the state has been highly unpredictable in terms of funding. And if there's anybody who has some insight into how to bust that dam loose, I don't understand what's going on, but I would love some insight.
Great, thank you. Dick?
Dick DeGray, Brattleboro. One of the concerns that I have with the zoning changes, I actually found out by accident, was the ability for landowners who have a back door that abut the Harmony parking lot, the ability to put an apartment on ground floor of commercial space. I really think that that's a bad idea, given the constraints that we have downtown and the availability of commercial space. And Franz, Frick just touched upon it. We do need housing, but we also need available commercial space. And right now we're in a little bit of a down cycle, but we're going to rebound from that. And if we take that valuable space that abuts the Harmony parking lot, and it actually, I think you can do it over on Harris Ave. That's why the bank was able to put apartments on the ground floor there. I think that should get changed. I think you should reconsider that. When you have a downtown district, we do need commercial space, and we just can't go crazy over getting apartments in anywhere that we possibly can, because we want to have reasons for people to come to Brattleboro, and that would be commercial space. So I would hope that the board would reconsider that. I don't know where that came from. I don't even know if that was from the Planning Commission. I'd like to get an answer on that. Was it somebody from the public that went to the Planning Commission and said, would you get this considered, or did it come from the board? Two of you were there when this happened. I believe it was in 2022. So if you could just talk to a little bit, I know you're antsy to get out of here, but that's a big issue, and it's a huge concern for people that are interested in having retail space and not having everything turn into apartments.
Okay, thank you. Sue, sounds like something
Sure.
you might know about.
Yep, so that was a planning commission decision when we were doing amendments to the land use regulations. So there had been, prior to that, in the entirety of the urban center zoning district, which is downtown, which basically is Harris Avenue, all the way down to the co-op and actually past it. There was a restriction on no units on the housing units on the first floor. And actually, I think it was like 30. You had to be set back like 30 feet if it was, because Hooker Dunham Building has some housing units on the first floor. We ended up, because there was such a need for housing units, looking at the downtown and saying this part of downtown is got a different built form than the block buildings that lie in between High and Canal Street. And so we looked at ways where we could maybe allow some housing, because if you're in a city, there are some entire apartment buildings. So we were looking for the mix of uses and to allow some housing. Particularly, at that point, we were thinking about housing on Harris Street in the Harris parking lot. The town had put out an RFQ to look at it for a developer for that. So it just seemed that there were parts of downtown that could have that. In terms of the property or the building on the Harris lot, that was probably, so we restricted it within a certain distance of the street on the first floor. And Harmony lot, that was probably an unintended consequence for that building, honestly. So it is something that the select board might want to revisit when we bring changes back.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay, Sue?
Can I just make one other
question for
other
yourself.
comment about an observation? So a lot of the units, some of the units that we issued this year are conversion of office space, not just downtown, but Canal Street, because the commercial real estate market and the need for office space has changed, particularly post-COVID.
Yeah, thank you.
And the outlook is still not that great for office space use.
Yep. Okay. All right. So seeing no further questions, I think we'll say thank you very much. And then we have one more bit of business to attend to. Elizabeth?
I move to adjourn.
Elizabeth has made a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 5-0. We're adjourned. Thank you, BCTV. Happy birthday, Austin. Thank you to all the members of the public who participated and town staff, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks.
Is it a couple of weeks? I don't know.
I like the sound of that.
Can't we have two meetings next week?
Just this one?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's all I need.
What is this?